acceptance for Linwood Street extending to Mario S. Canning Boulevard to a dead end along Way Street. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open.
Motion
Second.
made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, any written proponents on this item? Any
Yes.
written proponents?
Yes.
While you do that, I will entertain any proponents in the audience here tonight? Any proponents in the audience here today? This is regarding Linwood Street extending from Mario S. Canning Boulevard to a dead end along Way Street. Any proponents? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Somewhere in here. To Fall River City Councilors, the Board of Directors of Fall River Animal Shelter are sending this letter to inform all of you that we do indeed want Linwood Street to be an accepted street. Since our shelter is located at the end of the street, at the dead end, it would be appreciated if it was a street maintained by the city. We've been located there for 17 years and have heard several times over the years that the street was brought up to be accepted, but it never was. Hopefully this time it will. Thank you for considering this again. Respectfully submitted, Gail Furtado, President, Board of Directors.
Would that be all for proponents?
Yes.
Hearing no further proponents, is there any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents in the audience here today. This is again for the acceptance of Linwood Street extending from Mario S. Canning Boulevard to a dead end along Way Street. Any opponents? Hearing no opponents in the audience here today, is there any written opponents, Madam Clerk?
No, there is not.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close.
Motion has
Second.
been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item of public hearing is a pole location for the Massachusetts Electric Company for one new pole location as follows. Customer requested on June Street. Customer requested to install a new 35-foot pole and secondary conduit to allow residents to be serviced via an overhead electrical service as opposed to an underground service. The pole is approximately 63 feet from the existing pole on June Street and will be pole number 2 in accordance with plan number 303-21785 dated January 12, 2021. Is there a motion to open?
Motion to open.
Motion to open the hearing has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, and any written proponents?
No written proponents.
Any proponents in the audience here today? Proponent? You can come on right down, right to the microphone between the two, and just state your name and address for the record and the reason why you are a proponent on this public hearing.
Aaron Brown, this is new to me, but
No problem.
I'm the homeowner that requested the pole. I have underground power and I'm trying to bring my building up to code. It's a two-family residence and I can't get the right amount of power from underground. And I talked to engineers at National Grid and it's in the city's best interest instead of cutting the street open and try to find it to be a 2-day ordeal, it'd be an expensive thing for the city. It would take them an hour to put the pole in and I can get, power to my property rightfully. So I don't know the proceedings, but that's just my story.
Very well
It
said.
makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other proponents wishing to speak on this item? Hearing none, any opponents wishing to speak on this item? Calling all opponents. Madam Clerk, any written opponents?
No, Mr. President.
Hearing none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close.
Motion to close the hearing has been made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adjourn our public hearings?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn public hearings has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Pelletier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Fall River City Council Committee on Finance will now be called to order. Madam Clerk.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion? Here. Kilby? La Liberty LeBeau? Here. Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Here.
Pereira? Here. And President Ponti.
Here, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. First item on our agenda this evening is citizens input. Madam Clerk, anybody sign up for citizens input for the live people who are here? Nope.
No, Mr. President.
Madam Clerk? You want to speak? come on right down right to the microphone. And if you could please just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Brandy Vining. I am on 20 Bardsley Street in Fall River. I am the current president of Fall River National Baseball, formerly Fall River National Little League. I'm here today to ask for support to upgrade our fields. I've been the president for the last 4 years, and my son has played the last 6 years. And in those 6 years, the fields have not been improved at all. It's just normal wear and tear, the dirt, it rains. It wears, and it's pretty much down to your bare rock, what was underneath when the field was built. What we receive from the park department, from the city, is a grade above stone dust. There's glass pieces, there's rocks. It's really unsafe for our kids to be sliding into and playing. So we need help with our fields. We have about $25,000 to $30,000 worth of work that has to be done. And because of where we are in the city, the property values, because there's more single-family homes in our part of town, we don't qualify for city funding, for CPC funding. They have just put in a request to do Damaris Park, which we are literally right behind Damaris Park. There's many times that the kids that are at the field, their families go to Damaris Park. So they kind of go together, they're hand in hand. So being you can see the park from the highway, it's an aesthetic piece as well. We solely operate on sponsorships and volunteers. We have never had any funding of any other type. So we've always been self-sufficient, and we give back to the community when we can. We've hosted a charity tournament for the last 10 years, which brings leagues from all over, from Boston to Bourne, from Rhode Island. And we've raised anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 for different charities, being community autism. We've donated to the Katie Brown Project. Relay for Life, we've donated to the Boys and Girls Club of Fall River, was just our most recent. And then this year's current charity is Angels Anonymous, which is a very well-respected charity. They do great work in our city. So not only do we want to provide a safe environment, but we want to teach our kids to give back. We need help doing that.
So thank you very much. I know a couple of councilors raised their hand on this. I just want to, I don't know if you were watching our last city council meeting or not, but we had this whole long conversation. Councilor Kadim was speaking about how we really need to get a robust park program in place to help these fields. I know Councilor Peckham filed a resolution for a couple of other parks to see if the city can help them when it comes to lighting, because we recognize that that's a considerable expense for the leagues.
Right now, we have no lighting.
Yeah, I know you don't. So I'll allow the councilors to speak. Maybe we can find some kind of a resolution of sorts as a result of this. Maybe get your phone number before you leave so that we can invite you down if there's a subcommittee, so you can speak about the conditions, see what the needs are, and then we're going to urge the administration to come up with a park improvement plan, I think, to see how we can help your league and all leagues.
Okay.
Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
The question that I have, were you at a park board meeting talking about this?
Yes.
And did you talk about redoing the fields? You were going to have a landscaper who was going to come and redo it, but it was going to take you 3 years to pay. You wanted to do it in installments?
Yes.
Or something like that?
That was us.
That was you?
Yep.
That was there talking about that? Okay. And what was the disposition of the park board?
So they had asked us to come back with a phased approach. So instead of doing the entire project, which is more cost efficient that way, because our 3 fields are literally side by side. So it's more cost efficient for machinery and things to just do it. But they wanted a phased approach. So at the beginning of the month, I presented them with 3 phases, one of which is that middle field. I don't know if you're familiar with
I am.
Dumont. So that middle
Dumont Field,
field.
Peanuts Park, yep,
Yep.
familiar.
It's the one dead center in the middle, which is that one and the one to the left need the most work, but that's where our major division plays. So that project was approved to be done first. We're in the process of working out the contractual issues, just clauses and things, nothing of major. discrepancy, but we submitted that, and then we submitted once that's done, then they want us to submit, but everything has to be paid. They want it paid in full, so basically, we can't move on to the next one until they know it's paid in full. So we had a contract, we have a contractor that was willing to do the work and allow us to expand that over time, knowing that the leagues were solely volunteer and sponsorships, allowing us to get ahead and find the funding, but getting the work done so the kids can get on the field and play. But they want it paid in full. So the first project is gonna run us about $9,000. That has to be paid out of pocket. That's pretty much gonna take up a good 60% of what we have.
How much do children pay to be in your league, and how many kids do you have? How much money do you raise?
So right now, it's the registration $70. A lot of kids don't pay the registration. They show up, they want to play, they play. So we get the registration from those who can afford it, and those who don't, either they volunteer or their kids just play.
Because I did call somebody on the park board when I watched that meeting. I tend to have some free time and watch various meetings. And I was concerned of why this couldn't be a phased approach, and I was told that other people have done like a phased approach, but then they end up leaving or quitting, and then the park board ends up having to pay.
Right.
So that was an issue in the past. What I will tell you from my perspective here is that I believe that the park board, the park department, needs more money to keep up with the fields. And over the years, they have not gotten a lot of money to continue to do the thing. So I think what the president said about talking to the administration to put more funding into parks, but I think your situation with the park is with the park board. You know what I mean? To deal with them. What we can do here when the budget comes is make sure that they have some money to be able to repair some of the parks that we have in the city.
So it's even down to the point where it's a city park.
Right.
And even the most basic, I have fences that are tipping and the cement's coming out with it. That should not be on us to fix. It's a
Shouldn't be.
city park, but yet it is. I cannot do anything to that field unless I have money.
And it shouldn't be your responsibility to do that, I agree. But as I said, I agree with the council president that the administration needs to be able to give the park department more money to be able to keep up
Right.
with the fields and to have pride in our parks. I mean, we even tried to get, internet within the parks so that when kids are there, they have internet, or people can go to the park. But I think,
It's come down to the fact where I've been told that if it's unsafe, then the kids they just won't give us a permit. The kids just shouldn't play there.
oh, I didn't hear that
This,
part of the meeting.
I've been fighting for this for the last 4 years, and that's what I've been told. Basically, if the parks are unsafe and you don't have the money to fix it,
Yeah.
then we won't give you the permit and the kids shouldn't play.
Well, I know that you're here for citizen input time and we can't go on, but I just wanted to share with you my thoughts with that. We really need to give the park department more money. We can't expect them to go out and repair parks if they don't have the funding to do it. And over the years, we haven't given them a lot of funding. We're doing parks and playgrounds and obviously more people to go around and take care of it and clean it, et cetera. And I know that Mr. Perry is here, who's the director of that whole division, and I'm sure he will bring this back to the park board, your comments as well. But thank you for sharing it with us. I appreciate it. With that, I yield, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat one, Counselor Kadim.
Thank you. So I was just going to elaborate on what the individual had just said, and quite frankly, I don't know how any of us are not embarrassed by the conversation that's taking place right now. The fact that we've got a resident coming here telling us that they've got to find money to fix a city park. This is something that I've been talking about for the last 3 years, and shame on, quite frankly, shame on the council, number one, but more importantly, shame on the administration and the department heads who failed to come before us and advocate. For 3 years straight, I've said and repeated myself that if you take the park department's expenses and divide it by the number of parks that we have, you roughly get about $2,000 per park. That's ridiculous. We're trying to attract people who want to live, work, and play in Fall River. We're going to ignore the play aspect. You want people to raise families. But when we drive by, and I talked about this, just North Park, we did a great playground down below next to Morton School. You move up, the baseball field's not being utilized, it's just sitting there. Okay, so if we're not gonna use it as a baseball field, let's turn it into a soccer field, let's try to get some lacrosse, let's try to get some ultimate frisbee, let's try to get a Parks and Recs department in place to maintain this. You drive by Dumont Field, and we've talked about this, not just the parks, but we just talked about trying to attract people to Fall River, and the limited amount of time that we get people to want to stop in Fall River is 195. And we've talked about this, beautifying the waterfront, looking at Plymouth Ave, looking at the structures, the Quequechan Rail Trail. We've talked about that. When people drive by the city of Fall River, there has to be a reason for them to stop or to want to come in, so that then once they're here, we can get them to our restaurants, we can get them to our locations. But now we're talking about the trail coming in. I mean, the train station, South Coast Rail. South Coast Rail's coming in. We're seeing apartments being built. There's a high demand. But what we're ignoring is the fact that people still, and I mentioned the last time I went to Providence to go get some donuts with my kids at PV Donuts, that there were kids that just graduated from college that are looking at locations, trying to figure out where they want to live because they can't afford Providence. And they mentioned one of the hot spots, Fall River in New Bedford. And they say right off the bat, that's not where we want to go. And then you got to ask yourself, why isn't it that's not where they want to go? We've got the restaurants, we've got some great locations, we've got some up-and-coming housing to take place. But when you look at our facilities and our recreation, because that's what people want to be outside with their families, they want to be active. And we're missing the boat. And we are not investing in our parks, in our city. You know, and we talked about this. You look at Highland Park, the amount of money that we invested in Highland Park, the use that has gotten, especially during COVID with the basketball parks and things like that, it's unbelievable. We go to Maplewood Park. Maplewood Park is probably one of the better parks that we have in the city. But guess what? We spend zero money on that park. You know who invested in that money? The leagues. So if the league wasn't there, that park wouldn't be looking like it is now. And it just continues. I mean, so you go to Kennedy Park, you go to North Park, you go to Pulaski Park, you talk about neighborhoods, we should be investing in these neighborhood parks as well. That's how we're going to attract people. But the fact that we've got an individual who's standing here saying that they want to spend $25,000 or whatever it is, they got to phase it in, is absolutely an embarrassment to the city of Fall River and to all the elected officials that continue to just sit here and not do anything. Again, 3 years we've been talking about this. And we've never once gotten any budget that would reflect an increase. And if it's coming down from the administration that they don't want to invest in parks, then tell us. But I've asked. We can't just increase budgets. I've said it. Nancy Smith was here. How much do you need for your department? If you don't tell us, we can't advocate for it. And on top of this all is the fact that you've got these individuals who are going out trying to spend money. There are procurement law that we have to follow. Just because they're doing it, it's still being done on city property, we still got to follow Chapter 30B, procurement laws that these folks are not even cognizant about. So, I mean, it runs the gamut in terms of issues. I think we need to discuss it. We need to sit down with the park department and the park board, figure out what the plan is for all our parks. How do we mutually agree to stop funding and investing in these parks? Because I know they're limited too with the amount of money that they have. But when we start talking about CPA money, there's no reason why CPA money can't be used for Dumont Field. Maybe it's CDA monies that can't be used, but CPA money, we can use that. That's recreational. I mean, but you drive on the highway, that field looks abandoned. You could barely see the baseball fields now. And that was a facility that was used. All you got to do is go back 5 years. And that used to be a place that was always busy. You used to see the kids on, I think they had 3 fields. Mm-hmm. They had 2 originally. They couldn't keep up with the demand. They created a 3rd field, and now it's just nobody's there. Mm-hmm. You can barely see the baseball diamonds. And I don't disagree. You know, stone dust for kids, that's absolutely ridiculous. Not saying that we need Fenway Park grade dirt, but we should get loam that is safe. We should make sure that these fields are safe. They're leveled, because that's the other thing that we need to start talking about is when you go into the outfields and you've got kids that are running, you know, tearing ACLs or twisting ankles because it's not level and it's not graded. Those are the types of investments that we need to start talking about. I know we've got some monies coming down for the for the ESSER two monies and the, you know, the economy change that's going to be for, the economy grants, that's going to be really for, you know, capital projects. And I think now's the time to start talking about these capital projects. But, you know, I support the individual that's here. I support not only Dumont Field, but all the fields in the leagues that are here. And I get that they're charging for, right, but
But it's very minimal. I
but it's
mean,
not covering the
That's
cost and the
nothing.
amount of hours that go into and the dedication that go there, right?
It barely covers the cost of uniforms and paying for umpires. A lot of it is literally coming out of my pocket.
That's nothing.
So, and I want to applaud, you know, Councilor Peckham for bringing in that resolution, which really kind of highlighted this conversation again. But I hope with that resolution that we invite the park board down and the park department to really discuss what that budget is. And listen, if we can't get there in FY '22, maybe it's not FY '23, let's at least get a 5-year plan as to where that budget needs to be with that department and how much we need to start investing in these and what the maintenance is so that we can sustain this going long-term. So with that, I yield.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
Thank you. Just to add to some of the things that have been said, there's also a safety concern. I would agree when it comes to neglect of the parks. You know, when we do cleanups, I volunteer all the time to do them. We find needles, we find all kinds of different things around the parks. They're not being utilized. If they're not being utilized, they're going to be neglected by the wrong element. And I think you see that. And I don't think there's a single park in the city that, you know, you can say doesn't have that problem. So if we put some time into it and whatever we need to do, investment of time and money into it, we're not only fixing things for kids and for things like that. I think we're fixing up a safety concern for our neighborhoods as well. I wrote down a couple of things. I just wanted to make sure. I figure you've already done presentations for people, so you probably have all this information down. But if there's an inventory of cost, park to park, and also is there an estimate on maintenance of, you know, once, let's say the administration is able to put these repairs in, what would it be for maintenance as well? Because I think a lot of the times, and we talk about it all the time, whenever we try to keep up with fixing something, we never really stay on top of it, so that we end up costing more money in the back end when we try to repair everything after it breaks down, like we are right now, actually. So I think, you know, I think that maybe getting those numbers out there so that way, it's not as important for us to see them, although I'm sure we all do want to see them, but when we start talking about what we can do for funding from the administrative part of it, because again, as Council Kadim said, we can't, as a council, we can't raise the budget, we can only reduce.
Right.
So it's really going to be up to the administration as to what we can work out with them, but it's good to get those numbers so
Yep.
we know, you know, what to go forward with.
I can get
So-
them for you.
So thank you for your time to come up here too. I know that there's not many advocates, but you're one of the biggest ones, so
Thank
thank you. And I yield.
Counselor in seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
Council Pereira had asked, and I know you said it was $70 per kid to play. How many kids roughly in a league now?
Right now, over the last few years, we have had a significant decline in numbers. Part of that being because we were part of Little League and there was a boundary distribution, depending. So right now, we have four teams, ages 4 to 13. And there's roughly 15 kids on each team. As of right now, our major division, which is 11 to 13, we've had to cut signups because we don't have the coaches to support a team. So with North Park no longer having their charter for Little League and us going independent, which there is not a person that I've ever run into that doesn't say, I played there. My uncle played there. My grandfather played there. And I think with the ability of us going independent opens that opportunity for kids to come back. And people love our park because of where we are. We're off the beaten path. We're not in the middle of the city. We're not in the middle of all that havoc. I think if we can all get on the same page, in a matter of 2 years, I'll be back up to 200 kids.
Yeah, Dumont, I used to hang there all the time. I grew up on Pleasant Street for quite a long time. And I used to use the bike ramps right behind Dumont Field at Peanuts Park. I had filed a resolution, like Council Kadim had stated, Council President, would it be okay if, once my resolution is heard, to address both matters at the same time?
So
And-
I think we can talk about it, or we can act on it now. So what we could do is, I actually, while everybody was talking, kind of wrote down a quick resolution that we could take up after our full council meeting tonight. We can then refer it to the Committee on Finance. We can invite the Park Board, and then we can wait on the administration, hopefully it's relatively quickly, to prepare a plan on how we could address it this year. And if it's not this year, what does it look like for next year? I can add that, I'll allow it to be added to the agenda at the end of the meeting tonight. We can refer it to finance at that time, and then invite, this young lady down, as well as other leagues, so they can state their needs. But the real work, as everybody knows, comes from the administration, them calling out the leagues and reaching out and seeing what their needs are and how we can help them. And I'm sure there's going to be an appetite for many of the leagues to get support.
Okay, if you file that resolution, can I co-sponsor also?
Yeah, we'll do it as a full council.
Okay, perfect.
And I'll add this to the agenda after the meeting tonight, and then we will invite everybody down to the table to have that open discussion.
Okay, I have been tackling the sports issue for quite a while, and
Thank you.
the kids are the future of the city, so if we're not investing in our children, the
Exactly.
parks that they play in, and
They're-
as Council Kadim stated, you drive by Dumont, I actually thought of Council Kadim the other day, I was driving by to the split and happened to look over at Dumont Field, and it looks nothing like it used to.
No. It's a shame.
And the taxpayers are bringing their kids there to play baseball. I don't think they should also be responsible for fixing the fences on city property. So we will address that and see what we can come up with, and with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Council in seat 2, Councilor Dion.
Yeah, I think we all know that I have one particular line item in the budget that I let slip by last year. Can that type of funding be reallocated? We can't add to the budget, we can't decrease, but can we reallocate?
We can reject it until you get what you want. So I will just say that I just had a meeting with the mayor, and the mayor is going to be inviting all the councilors in to get what their needs are. What do you want to see in this budget? What do you want? So I would urge everybody here to say you want to see a plan for the parks to get your support for the budget. So as you know, Council, we can reduce, reject, or approve. And if there's anything in that budget that you don't like, you just say no.
So I think perhaps $40,000 infused into the park department funding could go a long way and accomplish a lot.
Right, and I agree. And we also, and as you spoke about in the past, Council, we also have the funding in this fiscal year for the feast that was supposed to happen on August. That didn't happen, so there's $50,000 sitting there that's going to flow through to free cash at the end of the year that maybe we could talk to the administration about and seeing how they can divvy that up between the baseball fields right now.
You were reading my mind. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none. Thank you so much for coming down. We'll do our
Thank you
best to
for
help you.
hearing me.
Thank you. Anybody else for citizens' input here tonight? Signed up? No, Madam Clerk?
Council President Ponte, Vice President La Liberty, members of the City Council. I hope this is the last citizens' input I write about the embarrassment of the superintendent. I want to commend every single counselor except Kilby because clearly he feels baseball fields are more important than lawsuits the superintendent has cost the taxpayers. But baseball fields are all you care of. And I don't understand why the school committee is not forcing the superintendent to attend a council meeting. Who is running ship here? Clearly, the 4 committee members on strings from the picture on Facebook being controlled by the superintendent shows he runs everything. Kind of reminds me of the Bye 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 song. And for the record, Councilor Kadim had nothing to do with that because we don't want him being attacked by a certain counselor again. Last week I was watching Easy doing trash on a windy day, and when they lifted the recycle bin, things started to fly. And he dropped to the bin, went to pick everything that he could grab up and throw it in the truck. I went outside to thank him for doing that. Thank you and stay safe, David Oliveira. The next is from Robert Camara. Dear Counselor, at your last meeting, the amount of the employee trust fund and the possibility of a premium holiday was brought up and a discussion took place. This was out of order, inappropriate, and in violation of multiple statutes. First and foremost, the money in the employee trust fund is solely employee money, and discussions of amounts, utilization of funds, and negotiations are inappropriate and violations of Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, and Mass General Law, Chapter 150E. Inappropriate because the funds are not city funds, and therefore they are not subject, they are not city funds, and therefore are not a subject the city council should be dealing with. Additionally, the funds in the employee trust fund and expenditures of said funds are limited by Mass General Law, Chapter 32B. That fact makes the comment by the CFO that they are negotiating inaccurate and frankly ridiculous. Negotiations are conducted under Mass General Law 32B, Sections 21 and 22, and the methods and manner of the application of surplus employee fund, the trust fund monies, are conducted under 32B, Section 8A, and the established past practice provision of Mass General Law 150E. The administration has used the city council in an election year to promote a premium holiday for political gain. The money to fund this so-called holiday is coming from a reduction of claims caused by COVID. Elective surgery, cancer screenings, and all normal medical interventions were delayed or deferred to deal with the pandemic. The problem is all these procedures will ultimately be done. The needed knee surgery, cancer screening, and all the delayed and deferred health care will be done. The costs will be added to the cost of the regular annual cost of health care. The result will be an upward spike in costs, which is why we must not just spend the money. This money is money that was budgeted to pay for the services that would have been done without the pandemic delay. These bills will ultimately begin to be added to our normal billing, and if you as a council allow it to be spent as if it were magic money, as a previous administration referred to money that appears from the sky, we will have a shortfall, not because we didn't have sufficient funds allocated, but because we spent money that was budgeted on a holiday as if we hit the lottery, rather than understanding the liability has delayed and will ultimately be incurred. This is a problem that has Blue Cross adding a COVID factor to their actuarial projections for the upcoming year. We have no way to determine if the bills will trickle in or come in the space of a few months. All we can do is live up to our fiduciary responsibility to protect our members and our health care. What you do as a council is up to you. Will you be responsible? We have given numerous holidays to our members when we have had numbers and projections to feel secure that we would not adversely impact our trust fund. We have no such numbers or projections currently. I'm willing to consider the holiday option. However, I will not consider spending money that is encumbered by potential claims without sound actuarial projects to support the action. In closing, let me remind the Honorable Council of the history of which side has been on the right side of handling its money and having accurate numbers. Just last year, you were told numerous times the healthcare costs were rising 8%, when in fact they were rising 5.7%. That 8% figure was arrived at by not including the rebates, which are the only guaranteed numbers in the rate projections. This was a knowing misrepresentation of fact by the CFO, and in my opinion, a violation of her fiduciary obligation under the law to produce accurate numbers to the legislative body. Please watch the YouTube video of the Fall River PEC meeting when those numbers were confirmed with the CFO in the room. The CFO also stated that the cost of the city's 75% premium share was $45 million, when in fact it was $40 million. That number was confirmed by Blue Cross and Gallagher's Diane LaFlash. Adding life insurance, stop loss, and other non-premium related costs was another attempt to pad the bill, and in my opinion, both malfeasance and breach of fiduciary responsibility yet again. Lastly, how many years have you seen the city with virtually no money in their health care account and the employees' trust fund with a robust cushion? If you feel that is prudent and fiscally responsible, that's your prerogative. I will, however, remind you that a few years ago, the only way the city saved the Canadian drug plan and its $2 million plus a year cost savings to the city was to get a $900,000 loan from the employee trust fund. Just think of our healthcare costs would be today if we lost that benefit. I have attached an excerpt from the letter I sent to the Finance Subcommittee of Mayor Coogan's transition team. I've sent it before, but you may have lost it. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter. If you need any more information, please contact me. And he ends with his quote, "If you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years there'd be a shortage of sand." Robert Camara, PEC, Fall River Retirees and Taxpayer.
Madam Clerk, do we have a copy of that email?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The next is presented by Dennis Pacelli, Chair of the Fall River Commission on Disability. Dear honorable members of the City Council, on behalf of the Fall River Commission on Disability, we are requesting your approval of funds for Phase 2, which is the ADA portion of the renovation project of the Watson Elementary School. The majority of this phase is for ADA compliance, so individuals with disabilities will have access to the entire building. I happened to be streaming a meeting of the Fall River School Committee where each of the school principals were presenting their budgets. Among the testimonies was Principal Celeste Hogue of Watson Elementary School, who detailed the current state of the building and the inaccessibility of the building to a student in a wheelchair. According to this testimony, the student needed to be carried to his class because of the inaccessibility of the building. During lunchtime, the principal communicated the student was unable to join his class in the cafeteria. As a result, he had to eat alone. This situation reminded me of a friend who attended the School for the Blind along with myself, whom was blind and had cerebral palsy. Many times, the principal or staff member would have to interrupt a class to carry the individual, Michael Sheehan, to his next class. The assembly hall was not accessible, so Michael would have to miss school assemblies. Michael went on to have a productive life, obtaining a master's degree in public administration and working for the U.S. Park Service before he left us some 5 years ago. But his childhood was exclusion after exclusion from activities, and we must never allow that to happen to our children in wheelchairs who attend public schools. Please reconsider your decision of withholding funding for the required compliance and inclusion of all individuals. Respectfully, Dennis Pacelli.
Council Press.
Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
Yeah, I know that some of us were asked whether or not to keep the item off the agenda or not, and I think that just as from my perspective, I want to at least let that gentleman know and others who do care about this topic that that some of us did choose to keep this off the agenda and some of us did. And I think, and from my perspective, I do understand 100% where people are coming from about the conduct of the school superintendent. And I would agree with every criticism that has come down this line. But at the same time, I do feel like it's important for me to at least let the public know that even though I definitely do not appreciate the behavior of the superintendent in this situation, we shouldn't let that stop us from doing our jobs, as especially when it comes to the Watson School. That's just my position on it, and I do respect people who disagree with me on this because I understand where they're coming from on it, but I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you,
yield.
Counselor. Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to discuss the topic that was brought up because I think folks in the community, or some folks in the community, just want to tie this to the superintendent. I think what we're failing to realize, and this is typical, right? We see this all the time. It's easy to pivot. Do you ever play basketball and you see somebody get trapped in the corner and then all of a sudden all they're doing is pivoting, and that's when you know you got somebody, right? It's what the superintendent's doing, that's what the school department's doing, and that's what they continue to do. They want to pivot on an issue and try to blame the city council for what's going on, as if we do not care about the Watson School or those that have handicaps or disabilities or anything like that. That could not be further from the truth. Okay, the fact of the matter is, we sat here 2 years ago, with a presentation from Ken Pacheco from the school department, talking about we were going to have this conversation, right, Mr. President?
That's correct.
Before us. Now, all of a sudden, we wait for the last minute, and some folks, and quite frankly, some people on the city council, constantly want to say it's about the taxpayers. We need to save money for the taxpayers. Well, this issue is not just about the superintendent not coming to the city council, disrespecting the city council. That's one issue. Along with the fact that the mayor, according to my conversations with council president, told the superintendent he doesn't need to come down here. But the fact of the matter is that there is a number of questions, at least from my standpoint, that I need to ask the superintendent, and only he or the school committee can answer, not Ken Pacheco, because I've got financial questions associated with that project, and shame on them for waiting 2 years to come back before us at the last minute and then using the excuse to force things through. Okay? The superintendent didn't care that he was costing the city $250,000. Anybody looking to save taxpayers' money? Are we upset that the superintendent cost the school department $250,000 in reductions in special education because he refused to attend a meeting once a month? Where's the outrage on that? Is there any outrage? Where's the outrage for those people who care about handicapped people and people with disabilities? The fact that the superintendent referred to somebody with the R word? Where's the outrage for that? Where is it? And quite frankly, if the school committee and the school department and the superintendent felt that this was an important discussion to be had, they would be here. I had a conversation with the mayor when he asked me during my briefings to address and reconsider. I said, absolutely, I'll be at the meeting Tuesday. Will the superintendent be at the meeting Tuesday so we can ask him financial questions? Because I've got a lot of financial questions, quite frankly, that include saving taxpayers' money with regards to projects that are coming before us. And it's only him or the school committee that can answer the questions. We can have Ken Pacheco come down, I'll ask the questions, and he's gonna say he's gonna defer to everything. So what's that gonna do? But let's use it as, oh, we need to submit an application to the MSBA. There was this card game that I used to play in college. It was called Bullshit. You get all the decks, and I'd get some cards, and I'd say, hey, listen, I've got 4 aces. And if I was lying, you'd call bullshit. Well, the superintendent just said that he's got 5 aces. I think it's pretty obvious what we need to call, okay? And it comes down to the fact that there is a lack of leadership, okay? And I wasn't aware of this when I had the conversation with Mayor Coogan, that he even suggested to the superintendent that he does not need to come to a legislative body at our request. So if we want to play it like it's a little contest between the council president and the superintendent, that's fine. But let's have a real conversation. Where's the school committee up in arms about the fact that it's been over 2 years before we've seen a plan? Nobody has an issue with that? 2 years. Not 6 months, not 9 months, not a year, 2 years. It's on record. Mr. Pacheco was before us. Okay, so if it was such a concern for those individuals and those students there, why haven't we addressed it? Why are we waiting till the last minute? Because it's easy to blame this council, to blame council president, and saying that it's just a back and forth to see who has more authority and more power. And it comes back down to the fact that the superintendent needs to resign because he doesn't care about the school district. He only cares about himself. That's obvious and evident every single day. And you see the communications back and forth. So from my standpoint, yes, I want to have a conversation about Watson School. I want to talk about the financial impacts. I want to talk about how they plan to stop paying for some debt associated with their capital items because they are flush with money right now. And so that we can seriously save some taxpayers' monies. Where the taxpayers, when we go for debt, are not increasing because we need to pay for additional capital items on the school department. So, you know, and not to mention, if you want to talk about that school in itself and the investment, School Committee Man Agia asked a couple meetings ago, and it was probably maybe 2 years ago or a year ago now, about whether or not they wanted to keep the Watson School open or if it made sense to have early education over there, pre-K to first grade. So there was no response. So is that what we're going to do? Because if that's what we're going to do, then why are we going to spend all this money with a change in the direction to potentially do an early education? Because the test scores are not well over there. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of answers that need to be had here. And it's not just about approving and rubber stamping everything and just getting down, like, because this is what we do, right? This council gets everything at the last minute and we're expected to vote on that. And if we don't vote on it, we're not doing our job. So if everybody on this council is comfortable with that, then that's fine. But I say we get back to the card game that I played in college and stop calling it, okay? Somebody comes up to us, they tell us they have 5 aces, let's call it, okay? That's how we're going to do our job. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Councilman seat 8, Council Pereira.
Well, I certainly didn't feel that the conversation was going to go this way. I was simply going to respond to Mr. Pacelli's letter, because I did see that meeting, and I have spoken to the principal at Watson. I've been there. And the child did not eat lunch upstairs alone. He would have had to, but the principal made sure that he had a lunch buddy to be there. But if we want to talk about not putting this on the agenda, I think it should go on the agenda. Whatever my colleague in seat number 1 talked about, what the school department's doing that he doesn't like or that he does like, whatever questions he has, we have a joint meeting coming up. We can ask those questions. But to hold this project back, I wasn't here 2 years ago, but to hold this project back from, from being done, who are we hurting? You're upset, you want the superintendent here, you want to ask him questions, you want to do whatever, fine. Have a joint meeting, do that. And I've heard, well, the charter says that we don't have the authority to have anybody from the school department come. I don't know, maybe we have to check with KP Law on that, I'm not sure. But I really don't care. The school department is doing whatever they have to do, whatever money they're spending, they're not spending, whatever the superintendent is doing and not doing, then let them handle it. And if people see that their money is being wasted, then vote accordingly when the election time comes around. Do whatever you need to do. I don't care. There is no reason, in my opinion, good enough to not have the item of the Watson School put on the agenda. I know we did a poll. I don't know what the poll was. I know I voted to bring it, to put it on the agenda. I know Councilor Kilby did because he told me he did. I hear from Councilor Lee, I think he just said that, am I wrong, Councilor Lee?
Yeah, I definitely voted to keep, at least to keep item 2 on the agenda.
Right.
But I wanted to, I just wanted just to say that I don't disagree necessarily with the criticism towards, all the things that was said from seat 1. It's just that I feel like this specific
Yeah.
item was important to vote on. That's all.
I mean, I agree. Everybody can feel or say whatever they want. Some of the points Councilor Kadim gave, they were fine. But talk about that when you have the joint meeting. If we talk about being transparent, then let's be transparent. We took a poll. Madam Clerk, how'd that poll come out? I don't know. I don't know.
It was 5-4.
Okay, I voted yes. Who else? I voted to bring it forward. Who else did? Can you tell us?
Sure, it was a 5-4 vote. 5 counselors voted not to put the item on the agenda, including
Okay,
myself.
who was that?
It was
Who
Counselor.
voted to put it on, who voted not to?
Sure.
I'm just
Point of
saying.
information, I voted to not put it on the agenda.
There's no issue in terms of.
Okay.
I don't know what we're trying to hide. I voted no. It's very
No,
clear.
but it's fine.
I mean, because we want to take a vote on a subject matter without having a conversation, so let's vote on it and then talk about it after
Right.
the fact that it's approved. That
Exactly.
makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, it might make sense to you, really doesn't make sense to me. I agree that it should go on. Whatever questions you have, whatever you have about, the money that they're spending on the school department side, and I agree. They've got a good chunk of change. Maybe they can pay for the field and not take out a bond to do it. I'm okay with that. But I just don't feel we should hold the Watson School up. I really don't. That's my opinion. With that, I yield. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So let me address a couple things, because I was going to wait, but we're talking about it now, so since we're in citizens' input, let me address the facts of the matter, okay? The reality of the situation, from my perspective, is we have some serious questions that we need answered here. And as one counselor and 4 others agreed with me, that there are also financial questions that need to be answered here. And nobody can answer them but the superintendent. So personally, from my perspective, I'm not comfortable with a subordinate to come down here and tell us where the project's at and where phase 1 is versus where phase 2 is, because the superintendent is the one who prepares the budget. The superintendent is the one who prepares the financial budget for the school department, which the school committee gave up their line item authorization a couple of years ago, so it's all on the superintendent's hands. But I got to say this, this whole narrative that some people are starting to create, that the council president is refusing to put the item on the agenda as a result of, going back and forth and political posturing with the superintendent, that's just not true. The reality of the situation is this. The city of Fall River, every single year, the taxpayers who we represent as a legislative body, the Fall River City Council, the Appropriation Authority, okay, has seen projects upwards of $9 million per year for school department-related projects. We give the schools 100% of net school spending, $163 million. Okay, we add $11 million for the transportation. We are up to giving the schools $180 million a year. $180 million a year. And heaven forbid that we ask the CEO of the school department, who's making $200,000 a year, to come before this body and answer financial questions. Because this isn't about the city council president or the city council against the kids. This is about the financial obligations that we have as a city council to our taxpayers. So we can shake your head, you can disagree with me all you want, but that's fine. The facts are here. And we can go back to the facts as well. Because School Committee Man Aguirre sat right there and was speaking to Councilor Pelletier at the last meeting. And he made a really good point. I don't know if anybody picked up on it. We have the 2.5% that isn't going away. We have soaring real estate values that aren't going away anytime soon. We have the CSO project with our water bills that are going up, 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 up. Oh, and hey, by the way, you know what we have? Durfee High School coming too. And you know how much that's going to affect the taxpayer? I've been saying for an entire year that we need to have the school department pick up their share of the debt service. The superintendent, at a meeting, ignored the comment. So can we have that conversation at a joint meeting with the school committee there and the superintendent? And let's talk about timeline for a minute. We want to do this. I'm prepared to have this conversation with anybody because it isn't about me or the city council going against the kids. The facts are here. In May of 2019, Ken Pacheco, Kathy Ann Viveris, and Mrs. Sahadi sat right here at the request of Councilor Kadim in April of 2019 to have a discussion about what the financial picture looks like for capital projects with the schools at the request of Councilor Kadim. Mr. Pacheco sat here in May of 2019, and stated Phase 1, which was $7 million, and Phase 2, which was going to be coming in some point in 2020 or mid-2020. Early 2020 or mid-2020. What has taken so long? And now all of a sudden this city council needs to be put in the corner and say, hurry up, you need to vote on this or the ADA compliance is going to be an issue? Where is the outcry on that? In addition to that, that came before the city council in May of 2019. June 20th, 2020 was when the permit was pulled for the Watson School. 11 months later. And now you want to sit here and tell me that it's this council that doesn't want to support the kids? The facts are this was a poorly managed project in Phase 1, and I don't have much faith in Phase 2 either. It's not about the city council versus the kids and ADA compliance. The ADA compliance waiver ends in November of this year. That's the rush from the superintendent and Mr. Pacheco right now. And the outcry. It's not about the city council president versus them. The superintendent can show up here, and what does he think is going to happen? Council is going to give him a cheap shot? Okay, I'll put him back in order. I have no problem, and I can share all of this with anybody anytime they want. The permit was pulled from the school department in June of 2020, 11 months after the city council authorized the project. And now hurry up, let's get it done in November. Well, we can't ask any questions. It's not going to be tolerated, and I'm not going to tolerate it. And it isn't against the kids, it's for the taxpayers of this community who elect us to be the legislative body to answer to them. That's our duty. Councilor in seat 6, Councilor Peck.
I didn't yield.
I thought you did.
I apologize.
Councilor in
Go ahead,
seat 6,
Councilor
Councilor Peck.
Just let me say this.
Sure.
Everything that you're saying, fine, you have a right to everything you're saying. But when they come to a joint meeting, all of those questions can be asked of why they didn't do that or didn't bring it to us in a timely manner. We have a lot of things on our agendas too and in our committees that have been there for quite a while too. Between COVID and all other things, sometimes things get delayed. I'm not making excuses for anybody, but two wrongs don't make a right. The school project needs to be completed. If it's not completed by the 30th, if they don't have that window of 10 months to complete that project, then it's going to cost more money because the workmen can't go in with children in school. It's what I was told. They're going to have to do it after work, which is going to cost more. So. And then if it's not done by November, it's got to be completed, then they have to go and ask for an extension, which I'm sure they'll get an extension. But, I mean, I've been there. I don't know who else has ever been to the Watson. But one has nothing to do with the other. If there's questions with the budget and stuff, talk to them when they come in for the joint meeting. Isn't that gonna be April 12th?
It should be.
So let's talk there, but put
So
this
you want us,
on.
you want me to put this on the agenda? Don't talk about it at all, Counselor. And then when they come at a future meeting, we'll talk about it again?
Just the
doesn't make any
Watson
sense,
School,
though.
talk
That doesn't-
about.
Counselor, that doesn't make
Well,
any
are you
sense.
not gonna do the Watson School?
I am going to have it on the agenda when the superintendent shows up with the school committee. It doesn't make any sense. So
Okay.
are we going to set this precedence now that we are going to have items on our agenda? We're not going to talk about it. We'll talk about it at another meeting after we pass it. That doesn't even make any sense. You've been
But-
here a long time. Has that ever happened?
But you're talking about other things. Then maybe you should have the joint meeting. Let's have the joint meeting earlier so that you can discuss this. Instead of having it in April, have it next week.
I'm not the
if
only
they
one
can
that wants to
make it.
discuss it. I'm ready to talk about it anytime the
You know?
superintendent wants to come to our meeting after 2 invitations. Sorry.
Well, I
It's-
just
it-
think
I-
prolonging
I'm
it.
ready to put this on the agenda when the superintendent wants to show up and have a conversation with us about the financial impact to the taxpayers. It isn't about me not putting it on the agenda as a result of anything else. If the superintendent cared, he'd be sitting right there and he'd be fielding questions about the project and the delays of the project. I'm not going to allow us to stop voting on things in meeting A, and then we'll talk about it in meeting B.
I don't even think we paid net school spending this year. I thought that was.
Well, the transfer of $1.2 million,
Okay, well,
if it's
for
passed,
tonight.
will go to net school
Well,
spending.
with that, I yield. Thank you.
Counselor in seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
I agree with you, Council President. My sentiment on this is we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure each project that we pass we think about the taxpayer when we do that. And what you were just saying makes total sense. I'm not going to vote to pass something, let it go through, and then we're going to vote on it and have a discussion in 2 weeks to get the logistics of the project. That doesn't make any sense. Am I correct in saying if the superintendent was here 2 meetings ago, that would have been on the agenda and taken care of by now?
Sure will.
Okay, so using the word transparency while talking about the superintendent, they don't go hand in hand with each other. If he was here 2 weeks ago, or if he was here tonight, those items would be on the agenda, they would have been addressed. He makes $204,000 a year, there's no reason why he can't attend one city council meeting at our request. That's asinine to me. I don't know what he's got going on Tuesday nights, but I believe he should have accepted the invitation, and we could have handled these two issues. It's as simple as that. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
Yeah, a couple of points. In terms of the Watson School, I do believe when I was looking at the capital plan, that there were monies that were approved in the past by this council and projects that were funded that have not been completed, that there's monies still sitting there that have not been used. I would like to know, if you needed the money and you had a project and it was supposed to be completed, why wasn't it completed? Why are the monies still there? Are we going to be deducting those monies from the 4.9 million? Or is it going to be added to it even though you didn't need it or use it already? That would be one of my questions. But the other point I'd like to make is you're right, it is about the taxpayer. And part of my issue with the baseball fields was about the taxpayers. I got a letter over the weekend from a senior citizen. Long letter, good letter, somebody who obviously pays attention, obviously an intelligent person. They also took the time to clip all the loan orders, prospective loan orders, out of the newspaper. $12,501,047 worth of loan orders. On their sixth point, they said, let the voters approve these loan orders instead of putting them into individual loan orders. How much do I have to take out of my retirement budget? What are these items going to cost me? They have legitimate questions, they have concerns. So you're right, it is a taxpayer issue. And with that, I yield.
Any further questions? Counselor in seat 7, Counselor
Yeah, just
Pelletier.
a fast question. If he's invited to the joint meeting, do you have confirmation that he's gonna come?
Yeah, he said in his communication to us that he has every anticipation to be there for the joint meeting, which is scheduled for April 14th, I believe, or tentatively scheduled. What is it?
It's proposed again for the 13th.
It might be the 13th, I believe, which we're trying to figure it out. This meeting should have happened scheduled months ago, but it's besides the point.
So what do we got this month? We got another meeting this month? No.
Right now, the schedule is, we have, this is the last meeting in March, but in April, we have a meeting scheduled for the 6th and
20th.
20th. So it would be
we're
the
2
middle.
meetings away?
Right. Or we can have it on the 6th if he shows up.
Well, if you got a joint meeting, he's gotta show up.
Well, the joint meeting isn't scheduled until probably after our meeting on April 6th. I'd be happy, the invitation is going out right now. The superintendent's happy to show up on the 6th. I'll put it on the agenda.
Well,
I
I don't
urge
know,
him
he
to.
should be here. If he don't come here, I think he ought to be fired myself. Should have been fired a long time ago. I understand that he's not roaming the school like he was. They told me he's keeping in his office most of the time right now, so I don't even know if he's doing his job. And hey, he should be here and give us the answers that he's supposed to, and that's it. But the invitation being denied, I mean, that's crazy. That's just hiding. That's all it is. Come down and face the music. That's it. Hey,
Thank you. I just want to make one last comment. You know, when I first got on this council, it's going to be my, 6th year now or whatever it is, this council was ridiculed on a regular basis for lack of decorum in this chamber. My first 2 years on the council, Councilor Kadim was council president. It started to improve the decorum, and it was hand over fist on how things were happening in this chamber. Granted, our meetings my first year lasted till 1 o'clock in the morning, all right? But there was decorum and there was professional courtesy. And I've continued with that same philosophy since I've been council president for 4 years now. And I will say this, I will never allow a councilor to disrespect a department head. I'd slam the gavel in a minute and say, let's get back in order. So if a councilor were to give a cheap shot to the superintendent when he is here, they're going to be reined in, just like any other councilor would be if a department head was here. So I don't know what the hesitation, we're not mean people, we're not bad people. We just have financial questions that need to be asked for our taxpayers, and I think he needs to answer them for us. It's not a hard request. Hearing no further discussion on that, next citizens input, Madam Clerk.
The next citizens' input was submitted by Colin Dias. Good afternoon, Council President and members of the City Council. I want to go on record in support of the Council President's decision to not add the school quote-unquote improvement projects to the agenda until the superintendent fulfills the duties he was appointed to do. Sadly, he is still the superintendent because the Committee of Four continues to place their personal interests before the needs of the city. We need to make a statement that we will stand for the faculty of this city. This is what the issue is. Faculty in our city were subjected to bullying and a hostile work environment in this city, and as leaders of this community, it is our job to give a voice to those who need one and to take a stand against wrongdoing. And it is a shame that leaders in this city, mainly the Committee of Four, have taken steps to cover this issue up, hoping we would forget about it and to underpunish the superintendent. Whoever says this superintendent was punished severely should look at themselves in the mirror. On another note, I wholeheartedly agree with Councilor Dion when it comes to the health and safety of our students in implementing this AstroTurf. We should look into alternative solutions to assure there are no health and safety issues on any fields we produce. I also wholeheartedly agree with Councilor Lee when it comes to the cost to the taxpayers on these fields. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and the city wants to spend over $5 million on fields, which the Durfee Rising people promised us we would not have to pay for the field. We would build the new Durfee around the pool and the fields. The Durfee Rising people lied to us. Thank you, Councilor Lee and other city councilors for putting the taxpayers of this city first. Why is the Committee of Four worried about placing this topic before the voters for approval? Speaking of the cost to taxpayers and Superintendent Malone's mistreatment of our city staff, the Committee of Four would like us to forget about all of this. They want us to disregard Superintendent Malone's mistreatment of staff, mistreatment of school committee members, mistreatment of members of our community. However, this matter is sadly going to get worse. We have the Secretary of State who's about to issue a determination on the release of the report. We have multiple MCAD complaints, which could cost our city hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is a detriment to our city. However, we do have an election coming up, and the superintendent will theoretically be on the ballot. And the voters of this city are angry, and they will make their voices heard at the ballot box. All elections have consequences. Lastly, I understand Mayor Coogan recused himself from the vote to remove Malone as superintendent. However, Mr. Mayor, if you truly believe Superintendent Malone is in the wrong, and if you believe he should no longer be superintendent, I call upon you to remove him from the School Durfee Building Committee. I call upon this council to formally ask the mayor to remove Superintendent Malone from the Durfee Building Committee. Let's do the right thing and defend the faculty and employees who work hard for our children and make Fall River a better place. The next citizen input was submitted by Rebecca Collins. While I respect the role of the city council and the councilors individually, I need to voice my concern as a business owner, taxpayer, and parent of district students with council's inability to move forward in regard to the school department's 5-year capital plan and the fact that the school projects were not being placed on the agenda. I would like to address Watson in particular. It is my understanding that this council previously agreed to fully fund the Watson project as a Phase 2 project. Phase 1 being the MSBA Accelerated Repair Plan and the ADA upgrades being moved to Phase 2 with a waiver provided by the ABA. With the accelerated repair being recently completed, Mr. Pacheco is trying to move forward with ADA improvement project to make the school compliant with ADA requirements, but yet the council will not hear it. I'd like to remind the council that the MSBA project was done in conjunction with the ADA upgrades at Tansy previous to the Watson renovation. I would be remiss if I didn't say, here we go again. The Highland kids get everything, no questions asked, but the Flint kids need to be paraded up and down Eastern Avenue and used as a pawn in the city's political games. I understand that many of you may not understand because you send your children to Catholic schools or get your school of choice requests approved, but Watson is one of only 2 true neighborhood schools left in the city. Most of the children attending Watson come from the heart of the Flint and can be seen walking up Pleasant Street in the morning or walking down Jepson. But I imagine most of you only come up the Flint for Sam's Meat Pies or Grinders on Bedford Street, so you probably don't get it. But those kids deserve a ramp into school, an elevator to the cafeteria, and handicap-accessible bathrooms. Continuing to table the capital plan kicks the ADA upgrades further down the road and potentially forces the school department to close Watson and place all these kids in Fonseca, increasing class sizes and making transportation more expensive for the children outside of the 1-mile radius. President Ponte stated that a poll was taken from the councilors to see if placing the school projects on this agenda would be favorable, and it was not. I'd like to know, for transparency's sake, who voted in favor of not placing this on the agenda. In closing, I implore councilors to put the hashtags away and work on the business at hand, which I thought was for the betterment of the city as a whole.
Councilor in seat 4, Council Vice President.
Thank you. In response to that letter, Council President, I read it before the meeting, and I was quite upset about it for a few reasons. One, the narrative, again, about, Flint kids versus Highland kids is completely inappropriate and not accurate. Every item that's come has been objected to, I believe, by Councilor in seat 1 for the school department until the superintendent comes and answers questions. There was a Durfee item of the baseball field, there was this item, and then there was one at the last meeting. So the Durfee is in the Highlands, at North End, if I'm correct. So saying that anyone is parading kids anywhere for political points is completely off the mark. And if we're going to be talking about anyone on this council's kids, which I would highly recommend people don't do that in their letters because it's unnecessary. We don't talk about families, we don't talk about counselors' children. But I can see who sits on either side of me, whose kids go to Catholic school, and mine go to former public schools. And school of choice, request approved in that letter. I'm going to tell you what my choice was sending my kids to school. For the author of that letter, who I would think would know this, and for anyone else who's listening, not that it is anyone's business at all, but when my kids started school, my choice was to go to either, when we live in the South End, to send my kids to Spencer Borden or to Sylvia, because those were the only 2 schools at the time, 11 years ago, that took medical children. My kids went to school full-time with a nurse when they were in school because they had issues swallowing. They couldn't drink any thin liquids at all. So to say that anybody's school of choice requests were approved, I'm not sure that that's any choice that any parent wants to make. As far as transparency, I voted not to put it on the agenda. I voted to wait until the superintendent gets here because there are other counselors that have questions for him. I don't have any questions for him. I called Ken Pacheco last week. He answered my questions. One in particular was the timeline. Had we voted on this the night it came to us and it went through the normal procedure, we still would have been up against the November deadline and still probably would have been looking at an extension. He has said that if the contractors work all summer, they will still be in there when school starts. They'll be working on opposite schedules. The school is not going to close. The kids are not going to have to go anywhere else. But
why are we leaving things to the last minute? And then it puts the council, we can't possibly ask any questions or table anything, because now all of a sudden we're up against a deadline and shame on the council. That's not fair. For the record, Council President, you can put this on any agenda that you want to. I personally don't want the superintendent here. I have nothing to say to him. I cannot wait until he is gone. I don't even want him here for the joint meeting. The last joint meeting, he sat there, rude as could be, condescending, and was on his phone the entire time. So, he has nothing to say that interests me whatsoever. And I just want to address, and some people brought it up here, the city charter, if the council has the ability to invite school members here, school committee members here, in the emails back and forth with the superintendent and their attorney, we see, the charter says this, the charter says that. I mean, it seems like everyone in the city, or certain people in the city, are picking and choosing which parts of the charters we agree to and when. So, Madam Clerk, is there a schedule, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe we agree with certain parts of the charter, we're gonna drag it out when there's something in there that we can agree to, like Wednesdays we wear pink? Is that how this works? It's unfortunate. I'm not even sure why we have the document in front of us. According to the charter, it says that we can invite anyone here except for the school department. So we always seem to have school department employees come when we invite them. The superintendent seems to think that he's special, he doesn't need to come. So we're gonna take that piece of the charter. So maybe we don't invite any of the school employees ever again. Which way? Do we want it? We want to have it both ways. And the last point I want to make, as far as emails and arguments coming from the superintendent in his emails, I know a lot of people haven't seen them. They're public documents. You should go ahead and request those, because they're a good read. His email to you, Council President, stating that it's against ADA compliance. If that email isn't the complete definition, or the supporters of him, using this ADA compliance is for the kids, if that's not the definition of hypocrisy, I'm not sure what is. You don't get to be okay with this man calling a disabled employee the R word, or all variations of the R word, or other words that we can't say on television, and then go and pull the ADA card. That's not how it works. You can't have it both ways. With that, I yield.
Counselor in seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
For all transparency purposes, yes, my daughter does go to Catholic school. We grew up Catholic, and I wanted my daughter to do the same, so where that fits into this puzzle is beyond me. Again, where is he? Listen, we make $16,000 a year. I'm here every other Tuesday for a meeting, public safety meetings, other committee meetings. He makes $204,000 a year, and he can't sit here for an hour and talk to us, so we can put this item on the agenda. It's absolutely crazy to me. We do work outside of here too, and I had read the email that was sent to you, I believe, saying that he's busy getting school back in order for kids to go back. I understand that, but we're also busy. We work full-time jobs, and then after work, we're going out and handling constituent services. If you do this job correctly, it's another full-time job. For the amount of money we make, compared to the amount of money he makes, he should be sitting in that seat tonight addressing these topics, the school department topics. It's ridiculous that he's not, and I respect Miss Collins, I really do. But to bring up the Catholic school issue, everybody in the city has a right to send their kids to whatever school they want to. Again, don't know how that fits in, but yes, my daughter goes to Holy Name. I don't know what to tell you. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I acknowledge one more counselor on this, we're still in citizens input, but I just want to remind, there's a difference between, right, like what Council Vice President says, being required to attend a meeting and out of respect for the legislative body attending the meeting. It's two separate things. Respect the body, and respect the students, and respect the taxpayers. Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim.
Yes, just since we're going down the transparency road, not quite sure what, where kids go to school has anything to do with it, but yes, my kids go to Catholic school. And the point is, the superintendent just got his son a paid internship with Suffolk for the Durfee project. Where's that transparency? Do we care about that transparency? The vice chairman, I don't know, his wife got a job while the superintendent was being investigated But there is a disclosure form that's filed with the clerk, but you can't really get the entire details because it is redacted. Where's the transparency? You know, again, you folks want to be, hypocritical, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it comes back down to, when do we start holding people accountable? It's such a dirty word. I don't understand when it became a dirty word, but it is. The fact that counselors want to hold people accountable, it's like you might have committed murder. The fact that we want to have people accountable. The fact that we don't want to wait for the last minute. The fact that we're actually trying to advocate for not just these students, but the teachers in the public schools. It's dirty now? Listen, I'll take it. I'll lose the election. I've said this before. If I don't get voted in, I'm not losing any sleep. I'm here trying to give back. I served on the school committee. I serve on the city council. People may disagree. People may not like what I have to say. People may not like my approach. One thing you cannot say is that nobody will ever question as to where I stand. You can say it's for a hidden agenda. It's not. I gain or lose nothing other than the fact that I am trying to support individuals who have reached out to me because they've got no other voice. So you want to question where kids go to school? Okay. So I pay taxes, but my kids are not going and using the resources that I pay taxes for so it can go to other students. All right. So, in November, don't vote for me because my kids go to Catholic school. Don't vote for me because I want to hold somebody who is supposed to be a leader accountable. Don't vote for me because I speak up on issues that are not politically expedient. Don't vote for me if you want somebody to just sit back and rubber stamp everything. That's as transparent as I can be. With that, I yield.
Councilman seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
I just have a question. Counselor Liberty LeBeau brought up about the charter. I've heard all kinds of stuff about the charter. Is there a way for us to get an opinion? I mean, we have that KP Law. I'd be interested to know, because if it is on the charter that we can't do this or that, I think it's important for us to know that. I mean, I have seen nothing but headaches with this charter. Every time there's an issue and we go to the charter and if something goes to court, it comes back that the charter was wrong, whatever. Is there a way to get that information? I'd like to know for my own knowledge. Because I think you invite people, they usually come. But there was something in there that even if we invited a department head to come down, that we have to file a resolution to ask them to come down. We haven't done that, but there was something in the charter that said that, and I think that's ridiculous to have to do. I just wonder if we could get an opinion on that, just for my own knowledge. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor in seat 4, Council Vice President.
Council President, we should never have to be sitting here for transparency, saying where our kids go to school. People should be writing in, saying anything about any counselor's children, ever. It's out of bounds, especially if you have inaccurate information, you don't know what you're talking about. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next citizens input, please.
The next citizens' input was filed by CJ Ferry. Council President, members of the City Council, I first want to applaud the actions of the Council President by not putting the school department projects on the agenda until such time as the school superintendent appears before the council. At this point, I believe that the school committee and/or the mayor should order the superintendent to appear before the council in order to move the projects forward. The school department likes to believe that they are their own fiefdom, but they remain answerable to the public. The school department also needs to remember that the city council controls the purse strings, and as such, while the city is legally obligated to pay for the education of the city's children, the city is not responsible to provide for extravagant school buildings and athletic fields. Just because the school committee allocates the money for such projects, the city council is not obligated to honor those allocations, as those allocations should only be made when the city can afford to pay for these projects without increased bonding. While I am speaking about bonding, I do not ever remember the city council voting on raising the bonding limit from $10 to $20 million. When was this change made? Who made the change? Who authorized this change? While I have heard that it only serves as a guide. Past practice in the city has limited the bonding to $10 million annually. It is amazing that with this mayor, all of a sudden, the increase in bonding has required the city to raise its bonding limit. It is bad enough that the mayor, the chief financial officer, department heads, and the school department deceive the citizens by dividing the bonds into smaller amounts in order to deprive the citizens their right to vote on and approve or deny the bond. The people have a right to be heard, and by having our elected and appointed individuals work diligently to actively deny them that right on financial issues that are important to their city's financial well-being. This practice has got to stop, and the city council must work to make these actions cease, as you are complicit in this deception. Finally, you have before you this evening a proposed bond order for the construction of a new ambulatory addition at the Fall River Fire Department headquarters. The proposed construction cost is $2.7 million, but it has a listing of items that have been excluded from the construction, such as owner's contingency, hazardous material and environmental reports and testing, surveys, removal of hazardous materials, and so on. Will that cost be added to the cost of the building to being up another $1 million to $2 million or more? This is obviously an incomplete proposal and should be sent back to the mayor for a full accounting of all costs. Further, this building is for EMS, and as such, EMS is an enterprise fund. EMS claimed that they pay their own costs associated with ambulances, benefits, retirements, and other items, and as such, EMS should be liable for the repayment of any such bond and further be responsible for the costs and maintenance of the building. If the EMS department wishes to claim independence from the city in regards to costs and equipment, then they should also accept responsibility for the cost of all bonding and equipment thereto. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address this council.
Council Vice President?
Just a point of clarification, was that Mr. Ferry?
Yes.
He speaks about us not voting on raising that limit to 20 million. That's not something that we vote on. He's correct in his next sentence. That is just a guideline that the administration uses with their budget and with bringing things forward, but that's not anything that this council votes on. That I yield.
Is that it, Madam Clerk?
No, I have one more. The last one was submitted by Celeste Hogue, who is the principal of Watson Elementary School. She does not reside in Fall River, so we would need a motion to waive the rules.
Motion to waive the rules
Second.
has been made by Council Vice President, seconded by Council Peckham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Dear honorable members of the Fall River City Council, my name is Celeste Hogue, and I have had the pleasure of serving as principal of Watson Elementary School for the past year and a half. As principal, I work with a very dedicated group of faculty and staff who come to school each day and give 150% to the amazing students in their classes. Our school is set to have money appropriated to it by the City of Fall River for upcoming ADA renovations and upgrades. I write to respectfully ask the City Council to fund this request and to visit our schools to see the need for these renovations and upgrades. Recently this year, one of our students who attends classes on the upper floors was in a soft cast and on crutches. For several days, the nurse and I assisted the child up the 2 flights of stairs in the morning to class and downstairs in the afternoon for dismissal, but the student was not able to access the cafeteria or the student bathrooms, both located in the basement. We accommodated the student by having this child have lunch in the classroom with a friend, and the student used one of the adult bathrooms on the floor next to the classroom. Also this year, one of our staff members had to request to work from home for a short period of time because of an injury and not being able to navigate the stairs to travel to the classes they taught on a daily basis. Respectfully, the faculty, staff, and students to whom I serve on a daily basis deserve the same access to facilities as those found in other schools in the city. Over the past year and a half, I have had the opportunity to witness the Watson Elementary School faculty and staff come to school every day very prepared to meet their students with a positive attitude and high expectations. The ADA renovations and upgrades will allow the students of the Watson Elementary School community to have the same experiences as their peers across the city and other public schools of Fall River and be able to achieve all that I and their teachers know they can. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to welcoming you to Watson Elementary School.
Thank you. Next order of business is a loan order for $2.1 million for improvements of several city buildings. Mrs. Sahadi, Mr. Gallagher.
Councilors.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good
If you
evening.
could give us overview, please.
Certainly. So in front of you is a loan order for $2.1 million. It's for improvement in several of the city buildings. These items have been included in your capital plan for the last couple of years. In summary, the police building, the police department headquarters, the windows need to be replaced, as well as the HVAC. The library needs a boiler. The fire department, the overhead doors, a boiler, as well as a generator. And we are still working on the parking garages. There's still some additional roof work to be done and some lighting. The individual items are broken down as they were in your capital plan. We are asking for $2.1 million as a loan order. If you do look at the language in the loan order this year, we have incorporated a portion of a sentence that will allow us to use federal or state money if in fact those monies are available to us for this type of an expenditure. We spoke with bond counsel and that language was approved by bond counsel to be included in the loan order itself. Mr. Gallagher's here to speak about any of the specifics of those four components if you have any specific questions.
Councilman seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
Mr. Gallagher, the fire department overhead doors, boiler and generator, what fire station is that?
Candace and fire headquarters to do the overhead doors on the main fire station.
Isn't the fire station on Eastern Avenue? Is that fire station, do they need an overhead door there?
Nope, Eastern Avenue has been done, Glow Fire has been done. We have done the Rytec doors, as we call it. They're fast roll-up doors to make it quicker for the doors to open and to close.
Okay, I thought over the summer, it was last summer, it was when I complained to you about the trees being cut there.
Yep.
And these big stumps. I forgot when that was. I don't know if it was last summer or this summer.
It was
Might have been
last summer, yeah,
was
last summer.
That they complained about the doors there. One of the firemen that was sitting outside, we started to chat and he.
Yep, those doors have been completed.
But you
as-
finished
yep,
those?
Yep.
Good. I know that the library does need a new boiler. The police station, we're already replacing windows there. How old is that building? Is it like
1997, yeah, 20-plus years, 1997, yeah.
Oh, I said 95. I thought it was 95. But, I mean,
They started in 95, completion,
Right.
plaque, ceremony 97.
I've lived in my home and have replaced windows as well. You kind of have to do that. And the parking garage, is it for both or one?
Yeah, it's for both. We'd like to put a rubber roof on the top decks. We don't use the top decks. And on one of them, as you know, in the past, had been shut down on the
Right.
upper floors due to some issues with the concrete. We've done a lot of repairs to that. What I'd like to do is cover the roofs in rubber to protect what we've done, and stop the water infiltration, ice, things of that nature. That will help us to eliminate using the amount of salt that we need to use sometimes to take care of ice that happens as it rains through the building. By doing this, once we do that, we would actually like to use the roof for solar. So what we'd like to do is be able to lease those two top decks on both parking decks to be able to put solar projects up there for somebody to lease it. We don't want to own the solar, we want somebody to lease it. As well as the big parking lots, we'd like to do some solar canopies there. It's one of the things that we'd like to be getting into. I had put out an RFP a while back about energy with Amoresco being the winner on the RFQ. So I'd like to have them come in the future, sit and talk with you and some of the projects we'd like to be doing.
And they always put salt there? They don't use the winter
Well, back in the
spread
day,
that you have?
back in the
Because
day, they were,
that's-
yeah, back in the day.
that's
they-
concrete.
Right. Back in the day, they were using salt. I have an alternative salt that I buy. It's hard to buy in bulk, so I have to buy it by the bags. So we try to just use it in the stairwells and anywhere where it can blow in. If you look at the parking decks, they have like open windows. So if it blows in any of the areas where people walk, usually the main part of the garage is pretty good. But before we started doing some of the work, it kind of just rains through the building, it rains through the joints that are in the concrete and things like that, so it creates icy paths. So we try to now use alternative salt and not use actual salt.
Well, I remember when we used actual salt, my God, I'm going back to Bob Connors, but when we did actual salt around the building and it dripped onto the highway, we got a letter from the state that we could not use salt around this building here because it rotted things underneath.
Yeah, if you go downstairs, we have pallets downstairs that are all alternative salts that we use. Because
And there's
it's
no
hard
way
to
to-
buy in bulk, you can't buy it in bulk, so we have to use it by the pallets. So we buy it by the pallets, and we try to buy during the summer months because it's cheaper to buy.
Yeah. Well, I know, nobody likes to spend money, and this is a lot of money to improve the building, but then, on the other hand, when we're not improving buildings, people are complaining that the maintenance isn't there. So, but thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for your explanations. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat 5, Counselor Lee.
Hey, thank you very much. I had a few questions. I just wanted to know if this is immediate work, or are there going to be other repairs coming down the line for some of these buildings as well?
Yeah, some of these buildings still need a lot of repair. We've, over the years, as we've talked about tonight, about parks and doing maintenance. After we do all this work to them,
Yeah.
we don't do anything. So, over the years, these, not only what I've done and for improvements, but we're doing maintenance as well. In some of them, in like the parking deck, I need stair replacements, stuff like that. But we're doing what we can out of my budgeting. So in my budget, I try to watch what I have in my maintenance budget and try to do some of it out of my general budget and versus having to come down all the time for bonding. So instead of putting a bunch of small projects together and making it a large sum of money, I try to do that over the year and try to do some of these projects.
Speaking of which, any grants or any kind of outside funding at all being used in any of these at all, or is it just strictly?
In the parking decks, I'd like to see if we can use, or go, there may be a transportation grant out there. I talked with our grant writer, so if I can get, and we can get any type of transportation grant towards parking decks or parking structures, we'd like to go for that.
Are we being outsourced any labor, or is it going to be strictly your staff taking care of all?
Some of the bigger stuff has to be outsourced. Some of, like the garage doors would all be outsourced, boilers would be outsourced. I'm currently short 2 electricians and a boiler and a plumber right now. We'll be going out for the plumber, and we're gonna see what happens budget season, if we're gonna be able to put the electricians back on.
Now, is that more cost effective to outsource than it is to keep them on?
Depending on the jobs, some big jobs, sometimes it's better because they can put more crews at it, they can work 8 hours a day at it, where my staff has to go to a multitude of buildings throughout the day and can't stay on the project and that. But some that are, like we did this council chambers, we did the flooring all in-house and stuff instead of
You're weighing it
outsourcing.
project to project as to
Right,
what
right.
you need, okay. And I think my last one is just basically maintenance and cost of maintenance, like now that if we get this approved, what's the plan going forward to stay on top of it so that way?
Yeah, so I have a preventative maintenance plan that I have with my facilities dude that we have in-house. So for like roofs, we just did on all the fire stations other than headquarters, because we still have another couple of years before we have to replace that roof. We've done some touch-ups and maintaining. But we have every year that we go out there a couple of times a year. So fall, when all the leaves drop, and that we make sure the drains are clear, we make sure the water's off, things of that nature. So we do have some preventative maintenance as we're doing new items. Same thing with the the garage doors. We have a plan that they do annual maintenance on them.
So those maintenance costs, will they be?
They stay in my
are you
general budget.
Calculating them within the?
Yeah,
right,
within my general budget,
okay.
yes.
I think that is all I have here. There was some conversation, I'm not sure when, it was probably last meeting about the library roof. Is that an issue? Or
That's
is that-
been all replaced.
That's all been taken care of,
Yep.
right, thank you. I yield, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
Yeah, the top decks of the, both parking garages, are those at the top levels, are those being utilized at this point, or are
No.
they still not able to be?
Well, on this Third Street one that's across the street from us, we don't use it and we will not use it. Structurally, we don't feel that cars should park up there, but it can be for solar panels and for the rubber roofing. And the other parking deck doesn't get enough of cars that ever go up that high. Them are out to the weather, so that's why we want to put solar panels out there. Really, nobody wants to, when they go on the parking deck, they don't want to park outside, they like to park under.
So the level underneath where you want to put the rubber, is that being utilized now or not?
Nope, we're still finishing off some items in there. Once we put the rubber roof on and things like that, then we would like to open up that lower level. I'm actually working with Laura from Traffic. We're going to clean it down, we're going to get it striped, things of that nature. But we would like to finalize this so that we can open up that upper level for cars.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting at is basically, obviously, if this is one of those situations where an investment, you would get a return on your investment, because we're gonna make an upgrade that'll give us the ability to generate more revenue through parking and perhaps the solar
Solar,
panels.
yes.
So this is, for me, it's a little bit of a different situation. You're doing something that's gonna create revenue, and there will be a return on your investment, and to me, that's wise money spent.
I think Mrs. Ferrera actually has a list of people waiting for those spots.
Yeah, I'm getting pushed.
I'm sure she does,
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
she does, because they lost a lot of spots in those parking garages
Yes.
over the years. All right, thank you, with that I yield.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 4, Council Vice President.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions in regards to the fire department, the overhead doors, the boiler, and the generator. I have actually a few other questions, but I'm going to save it when we get down to that fire headquarters building. The overhead doors, what is the difference between the ones that you put in and a regular new fire door?
So
And
a
is
regular
that
garage door is probably rated for about a 50 to 100,000 cycles, meaning the up and down portion of it. So you think of a fire station, how many times the door will open and close. The doors that I put in are rated for 1 million cycles. They're fast opening, fast closing. There's less mechanisms to them because they slide in the track. It's one electric motor versus a chain drive that you see in your regular household garage. It is the Cadillac of doors, but it is the way to go for our fire stations and any garage doors we have in our city. They're just, for what we use them for, police stations, fires, they open all day long. And they're just gonna get more cycles. These are light commercial or commercial, I'm constantly doing repairs on them,
So it's 100,000 open and closes versus 1 million?
yeah.
And what's the cost difference?
About $20,000. Those regular doors, the big doors, say Candace, those big doors are $10,000, $11,000, brand new, full, everything, door openers and all. To these are $30,000 a door. I have in my capital plan that I wanted to do all the doors in the city. Eventually, I'd like to do it was $1 million worth of doors.
And I'm not sure if you addressed this, I might have missed it. At the Flint, there was some repairs made at the Flint in the past where the units were taken off the roof and put on the side of the building?
That's correct.
Are those the air units?
Yeah, air conditioning, yep.
Just AC?
Just AC, yep. They have hot water boilers, which I had replaced 2 years ago. Prior to that, so it'd be 3 years now that I put in brand-new hot water boilers there.
Because I'm not sure, I learned today that the house captains, if I'm saying this right, fill out a report weekly or monthly, and they send it in perhaps to the chief on issues with the buildings. And does that end up on your desk eventually?
Eventually, it should end up on my desk. They have what we have facilities do it. I have the gentleman that works at Bill, I forget his last name. Bill Pappas, I'm sorry about that, Mr. Pappas. He does, he'll call me, and he also sends it in via facilities dude.
Okay. The reason I'm asking about that in particular is, and then you said the boilers were done just a couple of years ago, is because I'm hearing that even though those things were changed, they're still having the same exact issues inside the building as far as heat and AC. And what I was told today, and I might not be saying this right because HVAC is not my thing, is that while the outside, the units were addressed, the inside components weren't.
Right, the condensers that are outside were replaced, the air handlers that they have with the evaporator coils inside had not been replaced. They had been replaced before I've took over, but they are probably gonna be due to be done. It's not something that we did at the same time, and the ductwork all needs to be cleaned, so that is all on the agenda. But as far as it not working and not working properly, that's a little new to me, but I'll make sure that tomorrow, that'll be first thing that we'll be on and looking at.
Okay. Because if that's an issue and that is on your, upcoming things to be done, maybe we could do it sooner rather than later, because we
Yep.
spent this money to make these changes for the AC and the boilers, so it makes sense to also do the inside as well. But I will leave that to you, like I said, that's not.
There's 4 units in there. One is, actually, there's 4, 6, but only 2 of them are just heating units on the top level. Those are next to be replaced.
Okay. And I trust that you will ask the chief or whoever is in charge of that particular building and figure out where it's not working.
Yep.
Where it's working. Okay, and then my questions in regards to the parking garage were asked, and the same with my questions on the police station. You said that building was 1997?
Yeah, I believe 95 is when they started with the design, and like construction, 97, I want to say it was when it was completed. I believe that's what's on the plaques and all of that inside
So
the
the
building.
HVAC and the chiller, this will be the first time that those are being replaced?
No, I think the chiller had been replaced 12 years ago. The chillers are sometimes a little tough, and we had a gentleman that worked for us as we had an HVAC guy on the staff, young kid, kind of what we get, either retirees or guys that are going to retire or young kids. And he subsequently did a little bit of damage to them. He tried to power wash the coils and bent the coils over. We were able to kind of straighten them out. We've had replacement of a compressor on them. It's getting to the point it's getting tired. It's 12 years old already. They're usually a 10-year warranty on them, and then after that, they're no good.
Okay. And then I have a question. It's for both you and Mr. Perry, and it's about buildings and item 3, so I'm going to just ask it now. It's about the a proposed building, and in the capital plan, there's a timeline of buildings on what would be where, and I think it was 2024 about a building on Bullock Street.
Yep, we've talked about that several times and been to the park board, and we've talked about perpetual care money for that. We've talked about just getting the money for the materials and things of that nature. So that is something that is on our radar to be able to build, and I'd like to be able to do that in-house. I got a couple of big projects I'd like my guys to finish, but by the end of the year, if we could, to be able to at least put up the framework for it, so that we can have a place for the cemetery department to house some of their equipment in.
Okay. Because we talk about this every time equipment loan order comes in front of us. Same when we had this conversation, you guys were not at the last meeting, about putting something perhaps on Lewiston Street as well to have our equipment indoors. Is there any plan for that?
Yes, we are currently working on that. We have a drawing for that at this particular point, and we're going forward with a feasibility study to look at Lewiston Street in 3 phases.
Yes.
In 3 phases.
And
So,
what would the timeline for something like that be?
well, first we need to get a true feasibility study done and a cost analysis so that when we come to this council, we have at least some dollars to be talking about, because right now it's really just estimates. So we're hoping that will be in the next fiscal year at this particular point, or maybe later this fiscal year, but it is already going to be April, so.
Okay. Okay, that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on that item? Councilman seat 8, Councilor
I
Perry.
just want to ask a question. I know the cemeteries weren't on, the agenda, but my colleague brought up about the cemetery. What is in the perpetual care account? I've asked that a couple of meetings back, a couple of times. I never got an answer. Do you know what's in the perpetual?
I don't have the balance with me. I can.
Can you
I'm
please-
sorry. I will
can you
get that
please
for
let
you
me know tomorrow?
Counselor, I will get that for you
I'm just
tomorrow.
curious as to what's in there.
Okay.
With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Anything
welcome.
further on this item? Hearing none, is there a motion to refer this item to full council for action?
Motion.
Motion to refer this item to
Second.
full council for action has been made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Can you fix that light too tomorrow? Next order of business is a loan order of $390,000 for the excavator for the Department of Community Maintenance and the bucket truck with a lift for the police department.
We have Mr. Perry and Chief Cardoza here this evening for both their portions of it. The loan order on the table is $390,000 for the combined 2 pieces of equipment. However, Mr. Perry has done some further research on the piece of equipment that he's looking for, and I believe you all have in front of you a new quote, so we'd like to amend this loan order to $500,000, $350,000 for the excavator and the $150,000 for the bucket truck.
Mr. Perry, brief synopsis?
Yes, councilors, good evening, how are you?
Good, how are
Always a
you?
pleasure, good to see you in person again. So, yeah, when I put together the original estimate for the excavator, I was hoping to try to do double duty with this particular excavator, where we could use it on the road as well as use it for our loading and recycling. So I looked at a little bit of a smaller machine, thinking we may be able to build a ramp or a platform that it could sit on to reach the top of the trucks. But in hindsight, which is always 20/20, it's just not going to work. So we'll still be able to use this double duty to the point that you just mentioned about the DPW facility. Hopefully someday, if that becomes a reality, we're going to have some recycling centers there with dumpsters and whatnot, and we'll be able to use this on the property as well. And we could also trailer it if we needed to. So basically, the increase is due to the fact that we need a bigger machine. Where we're transferring our recycling now at Lewiston Street, the truck's back in, 18-wheelers, 100-yard trailers. So those are the real big ones that you see. And the machine needs to be able to get up in there and put enough of that recycling in the truck and pack it down to get a minimum of anywhere from 17 to 19 ton to make it cost effective. So right now we're renting a machine, and we have been for the last 4 years. That wasn't my preference. That was under my predecessor that decision was made. So over the course of 4 years, we've spent upwards of $190,000, almost $200,000 on that rental. I mean, we're more than halfway there to having our own. So, you know, we've talked about rental costs in the past, more so for buildings, but this is a particular piece of equipment that's costing us quite a bit. So this will be $48,000 a year that I can take out of my operating budget and spend elsewhere as opposed to rentals. I say out of my operating budget, you know, but I'd really like to shift it. Because obviously, as we talked about, there are a lot of needs in all the departments, so, but this would be a cost reduction in a rental that we could put to better use in other areas.
Just for information purposes, Mr. Perry, you want to amend the suggested loan order before us tonight for the Department of Community Maintenance excavator to go to, from 240 to what?
350, Counselor.
350
If you
or
look at the two
354?
quotes, one came in at 354, which I think I can work with the vendor on, and the second one came in at 338. So the 350 is a cat. That's, as Mr. Gallagher's expression, that's the Cadillac of excavators. But the John Deere is a really good machine as well.
So you're making the suggestion for 350, 350,000?
That is correct, Counselor.
Okay, and you want to make no changes to the police department bucket truck with lift at 150?
No, that would stay at 150. So
Very
the
good.
total loan order would go to 500,000.
Okay. Questions, Counselor in seat 4, Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
I appreciated the fact that it had the warranty information in there.
Absolutely.
Is that still applicable even though it's a different?
Yeah, no,
price?
yep, that's standard. So we would get that on any machine. We always make sure we do that. Obviously, a bigger piece of equipment costs a lot to fix. So.
What's the natural or what's an average lifespan of?
Lifespan of a machine like this, obviously preventive maintenance is big, but we do all of our stuff through CN Wood. So when we buy a big piece of equipment like this, if my mechanics can work on it in-house, we will. But when it comes to preventative maintenance and you know, the really intricate things that need to be done to a machine like this, CN Wood is our vendor, excellent company. And we try to stretch it as far as we can. So a machine like this would probably, I mean, I can't see us using it any less than 15 years. And even after that, and we try to cycle it out, use it for something other than what it's going to be used for now, and replace it with a newer one.
And the maintenance costs?
It would
year to
vary.
year?
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
it's gonna vary.
as the life of the machine ages, your maintenance costs are going to go up. The first couple of years will be nearly nil.
Does
Just
the
basic
warranty
service
cover-
calls.
Does the warranty cover any kind of service?
Oh, yeah, no, it'll cover some of the service, anything, any immediate break or any repairs that need to be done through no fault of our own is covered 100%. Maintenance is not covered in the warranty. You know, it's preventative, so it's on us, the onus is on us to make sure that we maintain that machine. And if we don't have an outside vendor and we just let it go, I'd say to do what this machine is gonna do, your expectations would be 8-10 years max.
regardless, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be less than $48,000 a year.
Yes,
So I
yes,
think
if that's your point, Counselor, yes, yes, I'm sorry, I usually
Yeah.
catch on to where you're going.
And I think that's where I appreciate the fact that we're trying to tackle some of these costs
Yeah.
that are coming down the line. And I think it's easier to, for some taxpayers out there to, to see, all right, now that they're doing their part, trying to bring down these costs, now we can come on our end to see what we
Yeah.
can do. So
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's what most people want to see. We just want to see departments try to see what they can do and not sacrifice service, not sacrifice quality of service. You're gonna get a excavator that obviously can do the job. And I was actually curious of any immediate jobs. I know you talked about the recycling area. Are there any immediate excavation jobs that are out there that you need to tackle right
Not
away?
with this particular machine. This would be basically 4-hour loading and unloading. So now, again, take this into consideration. The machine that we're using now is probably 15 to 18 years old. It's on its last leg and continues to need to be maintenance. Now, the owner of that machine maintenance and that's his cost. We pay the $4,000 a month, as I said. But this machine is going to be much more effective in what it's intended to do, i.e. pack those trucks. So if I can pack those trucks tighter with more weight, I may be able to reduce a few trucks. So not only with the immediate gain of the $48,000 a year that I can wipe out of that rental, I may be able to reduce the number of trucks that need to come to DPW to pick up that recycling. So that would also be a cost savings.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of equipment I could use, or, as throughout all of DCM's departments. But this one is an immediate gain, like I said, the $48,000 a year right off the top.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
Good evening.
Good evening, Counsel.
Yeah, I was going to ask also about the durable life. Did you put a number on maintenance, or did you not put a number on
I
maintenance?
didn't put a number on maintenance because, as I said, I mean, a brand-new machine, Counsel, the maintenance is nearly nil. And what we do would be just the service calls. So, I mean, that would be worked into my regular operating budget as far as repair and maintenance. That's a line item I have each year in streets and highways, and sanitation, for that matter.
Okay, because just the reason I asked that, while I was waiting, I was just playing with numbers. And
Sure.
we would absolutely have to own it 8 years to make it even worth purchasing it, because over 8 years, it costs the city $384,000 to rent the machine. So there'd be a savings of $34,000, which wouldn't really be significant. So that's where the durable life makes the difference. And then, of course, we have to take the maintenance dollars out of the equation.
Yeah, Counsel, I
mean,
can't
if
see
we-
this machine. I'm sorry to meet the
I'm sorry. If we get 15 years out of it, a rental would, at that point, would cost us $720,000.
Right.
Okay, so, at that point, that's saving money over the long run, again, trying to get a return on your investment. So that's just basically where I'm going with that. In terms of the bucket truck. Good evening, how are you, Chief?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Chief, I don't mean to tell you what to do, but can you go over there with the microphone? I think that's the first time I've ever told.
There's a mic on that table.
There's a mic on the table.
Oh, there is a mic. Never,
There's a
just
mic
move
there.
over.
Sorry, Chief, I stole your seat.
You weren't here when we discovered that.
No,
Good evening. What will be done with the bucket truck we have now?
Well, we discussed that the other day, and we wouldn't need it any longer, so we were talking about actually selling it.
Okay, so so it has, you think, some significant value in terms of defraying the cost,
Yes.
or trying to help in another situation?
Yes, Counselor, the issue really is the height that the bucket truck can go up, so as long as it's sold to someone that doesn't need it to go up quite as high as what the police department currently needs, and the chief can tell you about how high it can go and how high the new one will go, it certainly has a value to this day, so we
Right.
could sell it for some significant money.
Okay, because we're talking, 150,000? Yeah, I know it has a 29-foot boom, the one that you have presently.
That's correct. The current truck goes 29 feet. The truck that we're trying to get would go 45. But there also are some other significant differences. The truck that we have now, it's only weighted for 300 pounds, and it does not have what's called a material handler. In other words, when the folks in the traffic signal department want to bring some type of lighting equipment, if you will, they have to actually assemble it, bring pieces up one at a time and assemble it in the air. The one that we're buying now would have a material handler, but it also has a significant safety feature as well, stabilizers, and the truck we have now does not have stabilizers.
So let me try and put this a little bit in perspective. So, not so long ago, a few years back, we had a gentleman who was killed working on lights.
Almox, yes.
Very sad event. This truck that we would be purchasing, do you think the same thing would have happened, or would he have been in a safer position?
I'm not comfortable answering that, yes or no. You know, I wasn't part of the investigation, if you will. It was my understanding that a safety harness wasn't used. But this particular truck, the feature that I'm really excited about, if you will, for the folks that, you know, do this job is the stabilizers. I don't know if that necessarily would have had a difference regarding that tragic event.
Because the other thing I'm thinking with the longer and shorter boom, perhaps you wouldn't have to be so far out into the street when working on the lights either, because if I remember correctly, the vehicle was struck by a vehicle.
Yeah, my understanding was it was a tractor trailer that hit the bucket. That's quite possible.
Okay, 'cause I want to look at this from all angles, and, in terms of safety, anything we can do to,
I have some material here I could share with you, Council.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
Chief, I spoke to you before the meeting, and that was one of my biggest concerns, and I'm glad Councilor Dion brought it up, was the safety aspect or the safety features of the new vehicle. I unfortunately, I worked there when Manny passed away. I think, how old is the truck we have now?
2009.
Okay. And again, I'm going to go back to the life expectancy of the vehicle, considering all maintenance is kosher, and how long are we looking to keep the new truck? I know as long as possible, but.
Yeah, obviously. Obviously, when it comes to the truck itself, the chassis and the motor, we have our own maintenance people that do that. As far as the lift itself, that's something that we would send out if, a specialized type of repair or maintenance that would have to be done. But some of my conversations with Chris, who's our traffic signal electrician, that's not something that would have to happen for quite some time.
Okay, because I like the fact that it's probably all obviously upgraded safety equipment. Stabilizers are huge, and the harness features. And I believe from what you're telling me, if they don't have to go up and down because of they're not capable of bringing the material up. A lot of these jobs that we use this truck for, and I see this truck out there all the time. There was lights out today on Broadway, and they would bring the truck out to service those lights. The jobs would probably be expedited and done a lot quicker than they would have been with the old truck. But again, going back to the safety concerns, I like the fact that it has the stabilizers and the harness, and the jobs can be expedited more efficiently than they are now. And I find that to be a good thing. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat 7, Counselor Pelletier.
Bucket truck, I guess that's a hot topic, but tonight, it's a lot cheaper than Mr. Perry's, But Mr. Perry needs what he needs as well. But
I want to make it easy on you, Counselor.
whoever can answer this question, the tree department, they got a bucket truck?
We do, Counselor.
And how far does it go up?
Oh, that one's 60 feet, I believe, is its max. 58 feet, possibly, yeah. 60 feet, I think, fully extended.
Would it be worth it to, Chief, is it pretty good shape or not?
The one I currently have,
Yes,
the 29-footer?
yeah.
Yeah, it's decent. It just doesn't do what we need it to do. There's quite a few traffic signals in the community, as you know, and it doesn't go as high as we like, and Councilor Peckham is 100% correct. It takes quite a bit of time to actually build the lights in the intersection and then install them versus building the lights back at the station and just bring them and lifting them up with the material handler.
Would it be worth it, actually, for the monies that you're gonna get, I don't know what you're gonna get for it, that the tree department could use it as well? instead of getting what? How much can you get for that piece?
So, Counselor, when the chief mentioned that, what he was gonna do with the old one, I actually made a note of that, to speak to him about that. It is something we could possibly use in-house, in DCM. We'd have to see where it's at, its actual age. There is a certain point at which bucket trucks can no longer be certified. When they get to a certain age, the companies that do the certification will not certify them anymore, but that's 20 years. So, to be honest with you, the one at the park department, tree department rather, is actually getting up there. We may have one more certification left in it before we really have to start looking at replacing it. Now, we wouldn't get rid of the truck. It's the tree truck, so it's probably only got 37,000 miles on it. So we'd take that truck and repurpose it. But to your point, yeah, so when any department purges off equipment that they no longer use, that equipment is put out to all of the other departments as surplus equipment, and we have an opportunity to claim that from those departments for whatever monetary figure they put on it, or just a simple equipment transfer, depending on the cost and the value of that particular piece of equipment. So that's something that would happen organically anyway. Once the chief was done with the truck, if it was gonna go out to auction or for bid, it would be offered to all the departments first. If anybody thought they could use it, we'd go that route.
Well, I think piece of equipment that can use again, I mean, I don't know, what is the thing, what can you get for that thing?
In the aftermarket, Counselor, it's very low. You know, you gotta put it out to auction, and Tammy, Miss Martino in purchasing has done a great job recently. Her and I discussed some of the older equipment behind DPW, which we put 5 of those pieces of equipment up for auction last week. So we're trying to get that cleaned out. She's actually looking at a second website that might actually, get us some more clientele. Certain people only look at certain websites for auctions, so we might get ourselves a whole nother demographic of people bidding on stuff. But in that aftermarket, Counselor, you're basically getting it for bottom dollar. You buy your wife a nice piece of jewelry, you go back to the jewelry store, they're not gonna give you what you paid for it, they're gonna give you the price of the gold, and that's about it. So you end up walking away with less, nothing, but much less than what you, as a department, may feel the piece of equipment's worth.
Well, I think you should think about it, and it's a piece of equipment, if you got 3,000 or 4,000, I don't know. It's not that much money if they can use it.
Easy, Counsel, I'm gonna have to work out a deal with the chief, you don't wanna drive the cost up too much.
I'm gonna have to see what he's got on the lot.
That money goes to your department or goes to general fund? Chief?
Oh, I think it goes to the general fund, correct?
That's correct.
General fund, that is correct.
All right, well, you guys can decide what to do.
Thank you, Counsel.
I yield, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. I may have heard something and maybe I didn't. Did you say you can get good money for it? Or
No.
did somebody say we could get good money for it and then somebody said we can't get good money? I'm just confused. I'm sorry, maybe I misheard.
I'm not sure if anybody said you can get good money for it, Counsel. What I did say was that, when it goes to auction, it's really rock bottom. You're getting bottom line prices for that. It's basically a bid process, so nobody's gonna start high. We drive it up as far as we can, and if we don't get what we feel we deserve for it, we'll leave it. We won't sell it in the auction. We'll hold on to it and try to rebid it again. But no, generally in auction situations, you don't really reap a huge benefit from that. It's a recovery. You don't get nothing for it. You do get something, but not what we'd like to see.
Councilor Pelletier, go ahead.
Mr. Perry, I recall a piece of equipment that went out to auction, and surprisingly, you got like $9,000 for that piece. You remember that?
Which one would that be, Counsel?
Oh, I don't know what it was.
Yeah, no, I'm not
It
sure.
was a fire truck or this.
I mean, the best thing I can really describe it to you as is, and all of you,
Trash truck or trash truck?
well, not 9,000. So other than the trash trucks is what I was gonna reference. Really, Counsel, is the thing I can compare it to that you will all understand, because you were all here when this happened just about, and if not, I'm sure you were paying attention, are the trash trucks. Right? When we no longer needed those trash trucks, they had to go out for auction. Now, we sent them to Connecticut for that auction because that was the best place we felt we could get the price. But at the end of the day, we ended up, I believe it was somewhere around $120, $125 for each truck. And when you look at the overall cost for each one, it was somewhere, certain ones, the one-arm trucks were about $275. and the regular trash trucks were probably somewhere in the range of 225 to 240. We ended up walking away with about 120 to 125 for each of those. So that's your auction experience. When you surplus equipment, you take a good hit.
You certainly give somebody a gift, I think. That's the way it goes.
Yeah,
Get
well.
rid of the trash trucks.
Yeah.
You get much for it. When you buy them, top dollar, like you say.
That's
You
right.
get rid of, forget it. I yield, thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, let the record reflect that I believe they were trying to just get rid of the trash trucks at one point, and then the city council required that they go to auction, and then they ended up getting millions of dollars for it under the prior administration. So that was, I agree with what Mr. Perry is saying to his point, whereas if they're gonna wholesale the truck or get rid of the truck, they're gonna get pennies versus trying to get a little bit more, because that was an example of trash trucks. I think we were seeing a amount of like less than $250,000 or $400,000 to get rid of all those trash trucks. And then the council said it ain't happening, and we ended up getting them to go to auction with those, and they got over $1 million for them. Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
And that was good that we got over $1 million because we still had to pay them off. They still weren't even paid off, so
Sorry, I didn't mean to touch on a sore
we
subject.
didn't win, well,
Thanks, Joe.
it
I was
was
just
a
trying
sore
to,
subject
just
for
trying
many
to
of
throw out a
us that,
comparison there.
it was a sore subject
Yep,
for many of
no.
us that were here at the
I
time.
get it, yeah.
Sell trucks and still pay a bill.
Certainly.
Okay. How long does it take for this equipment to come in?
My
You know-
build time for the excavator is 8 weeks.
8 weeks?
Yep. I asked that question the other day. It's a good question. 6 months, they got to build it.
Oh, 6 months. Okay. So you're still going to have a bucket truck for the older one for quite a while.
At least 6 months, that's what he told me.
Maybe we can use that on that project. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further questions on this item, is there a motion to refer the item to full council for action?
Motion to refer to full
Motion
council.
motion to refer the item to full council has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next order of business is a loan order for $2.7 million for the construction of a building at fire headquarters to house a Rescue 7 and the crew. I'm going to allow Mr. Gallagher to set up kind of a display for people at home to see it. In the meantime, if there's some kind of dialogue that could be given on how this is happening, Mrs. Hart, if you want to get going while they set up.
Yeah, certainly, Council President. So this loan order is for $2.7 million. It's to construct a building that is going to be adjacent to or attached to the current fire headquarters, at which time this is where the EMS department is going to be located. It's going to house Rescue 7, it's going to include a training room as well as some sleeping quarters, a small kitchenette, and you will see shortly the diagram for it. This has gone through the vetting stage with the fire chief as well as the director of EMS, and it has been, a feasibility study has been done, and you have in your packet that study. There has been a couple of adjustments to the study from the point that this particular document was prepared, but we're still certain that we can build this building for $2.7 million. Reminding the council, I know this came up a little bit earlier, I believe in citizen input, this particular building is for the purposes of our EMS department, which is an enterprise fund, and the EMS department would be paying the principal and interest repayment on this loan if in fact we borrow the funding. Again, as I indicated earlier, we have a section in the loan order that indicates if we are able to obtain any federal or state monies, we could utilize those monies to pay down or not borrow the $2.7 million upon completion of the building of this building. We still need this council to do the appropriation. So that's why we've added that section in each one of these loan orders. So if we are able to use any of the federal money, we certainly will. that has been awarded to the city of Fall River. At this particular point, there is still a lot of unknowns and questions that have not been answered as to what types of expenditures will truly be eligible.
Chief, do you want to speak on this at all while we wait for this to get set up?
Sure. So about a year and a half ago, Director Oliver and myself got together, and we decided that the stations were being overburdened because of the expansion of the EMS division. There were many more medical rescues that were put into service, and they were running out of the stations. We had many reserve medical rescues that were also being stored in the stations, and we were running out of room. So our original concept was to build just a space building and take the spare rescues out of the stations and store them. In the course of our thinking about this, and in consultation with Mr. Gallagher, we thought that maybe it might be better if we thought a little bit more into the future. So at that point, we came up with the concept, it might be better if we built a building that would be more versatile and could be used for the future. Not just to store buildings, but had office space set up so a medical rescue could run out of that building. Because obviously you know that we've expanded so many times in the last few years, and the way things are going in the industry, there's a good chance that we'll be expanding again, especially in the north end of Fall River. So at that point, we got together with Mr. Gallagher and we discussed our plans, and we looked for a spot at headquarters that we could do this. And we've already done some test borings, we've done a lot of the research already. And to get back to Mr. C.J. Ferry, we don't have to do any type of hazmat testing there because obviously that was already done when that whole complex was done. We've done environmental studies already, we've done borings. So we came up with this perfect spot which is on the side of the North Station. So this is how we got to this point now. We try to make it so it blends in with the North Station and the whole complex itself. When you look at the diagram, you're going to see that some of the features of the North Station have been incorporated into this new building. It has many facilities for office space, which will take a lot of the burden at headquarters, because right now, with the expansion of EMS, we've taken over a lot of what used to be storage spaces and turned them into office spaces for some of the EMS personnel. This will actually give them real offices to work out of. And it will also free up some space for fire headquarters that used to be storage for us because we've run out of room there. So the concept we have here, I think, is a very good one. It's something that can be expanded in the future. So we won't have to come back in 5 or 6 years, it won't be me, and say, well, you know, we need to build an extension on this building. This building should be more than adequate for any future needs we might have. So with that, if you have any questions for myself or Mr. Gallagher or Mrs. Sahadi, I'm here for you.
Councilor on seat 2, Councilor Dion.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
How are you? Long time no see.
Yes, I know. It's good to be back.
Good, it is. All right, so I do have a few questions, but firstly, I'm going to ask, for clarification, did you say that the EMS Enterprise Fund would ultimately pay this loan order?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is just more semantics?
Well, it needs to be approved by this council in
Right.
terms of being able to appropriate the money and spend it, but the enterprise fund would be paying the principal and interest.
Okay, thank you.
For the life of the loan order?
Yes, Counselor.
Okay. Now, there's a couple of dollar amounts here. If you go to the end of the architect or Keough report, it's $2,761,382. In the mayor's letter, it's 2.7 million. And then on the next page, it's stated that Mr. Gallagher said it can be built for 1.2 million.
I think originally that 1.2 million was when we were just looking at a minimized building. And this started like 18 months ago. with just a space building, and then we thought about other ideas. So I think that $1.2 million was that first figure when we first was talking about it, and we proposed to the mayor and the CFO, and we asked them, they thought that was possible. So I think that's where that number came from. The current number of 2.7 million is what you see in front of you in the
So
building that
basically,
we
that's
just
when it was in
described.
its infancy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and Counselor, I'm not 100% sure where you're reading, just so we're clear. On the report that I have, page 14 of 14, the estimated cost was $2,761,382.
Yes.
So it was rounded down to $2,007,000 because there's some contingencies in this.
Oh, okay, that's, yep, okay, I was
So
wondering.
it's just rounded down because there were some estimates in here. After sitting with them, we determined that the $2,007,000 would be adequate for the loan order.
Okay, very good. Let's see, I wrote a couple of notes here. Where does everybody train now? Because I see there's gonna be classrooms, EMS, fire, police, et cetera. So
we have a
what
train-
would change with that?
Well, the
maybe,
training
is what I'm asking?
facility at headquarters is very well used. So the EMS division has been using it along with the fire side. And also, we also have some outside entities come in, like the Red Cross. We have MEMA come in. I sponsor some meetings with the Bristol County Fire Chiefs, the international associations. So it's well used, and at the point, like when we have our academies there, and Mass Fire Academy uses it, is getting overworked. So this will free up some of the training that EMS has started to do with CPR. They do, they train the public, nursing homes, with hospital staffs, industrial companies for CPR, first aid classes, ACLS, advanced cardiac, pediatric, life support, and refresher classes and medical rounds for the EMS personnel.
So
that-
at this point in time, you basically just have one classroom, and if it's used, and that's it. And this would
Correct.
allow for more things to take place
And
at
I
the
can
same
guarantee it's
time.
almost used every day. Somebody's has something going on in there.
We've actually used it ourselves for OSHA training.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, this Rescue 7, is that frontline apparatus, or is it backup?
No, that's frontline.
It is frontline.
They do what we call now is returns. So if we transport somebody to the hospital on an emergency, when they come out of the hospital and they need to be transported back, we have first call on that. So this rescue does that, but it also does the emergency calls also. But it runs 24/7.
Okay. And I saw where it was noted that you have spare medical rescues. How many spare vehicles do we have?
Right now, we
It's a
have-
three-part question.
Right, we have 4 spare medical rescues right now, reserve.
Okay.
We have that, I call it mini ambulance, the 6-wheel vehicle that we use in parks and different functions. We have 2 trailers, and obviously, if you've been up to our testing site, we have all those tents and all that equipment there. So eventually, hopefully, that stuff might go away and it has to be stored somewheres.
Okay, so basically 7. Now, the spare rescues, how often are they used, and do we, it's gonna sound crazy, but do we need them all?
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
Are they used that often? I mean,
u-
when you
they are
refer to
used that
something as a
often.
spare.
Yeah. Those
Okay.
medical rescues are running basically almost, I want to say 24/7. So obviously, with that wear and tear, there's always a lot of maintenance has to be done on them. They do break down, so now they have to be able to switch over almost immediately. So that's why we need those 4 medical rescues.
Yeah, I have a scanner at home, and I know how much that you're out. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely incredible. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you very much. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
Actually, my question was answered, so I'll yield the floor.
Any
Thank you.
further questions? Counselor in seat 4, Counsel Vice President.
Thank you. Hi, Chief.
Good evening.
I have just a couple of questions. This is the first night that I heard, and it was before, so we referred it, that EMS was going to be paying for the principal and interest on this.
It's very similar to when we come down with water. phases, the Water Enterprise Fund or the Sewer Enterprise Fund pays their share of the debt on the projects. That would be the same thing here. The EMS department would be paying their share of the debt on it.
Okay. And then the other question I had, and I mentioned it at the last meeting, which is why I asked for the chief and Director Olivera to come. During the last administration, Mrs. Viveras came down a lot in the talk of what was of a merger between
Yes.
EMS and fire, and I'm not sure how far that's gone, if it's gone anywhere. But my question would be, I know Stanley doesn't have a rescue there, Stanley Street Station doesn't have a rescue
They
there.
do not.
And if we're looking to build something for Rescue 7 and Stanley Street is in disrepair, was any thought put into perhaps building a new station?
We actually have discussed that, Mr. Gallagher and myself. We have a location that we're still working on, but a station of that size, number one, is going to take several years in time of concept to build and actually manning the station. And that is down the line. This building here is needed right now.
So the question I have.
And even if we build a new station, this building here would still be utilized to its fullest potential.
Are you talking about the idea under the last administration on the lawn of Carlin Maderas for the new Stanley Station?
We are.
Because that was brought up, and then it was said that that was, just kind of a pie-in-the-sky idea, so I thought that that idea was out the window. However, Mr. Gallagher.
I don't know who said it was a pie-in-the-sky
I
idea.
have to remember that. We were given, Mr. Gallagher gave me tonight two studies, one for Central and one for Stanley from 2018 for new fire stations. Are we doing anything with either of these?
The Stanley one is one we, as the chief talked about, we definitely desperately need a new Stanley Fire Station. The location in front of the Carlos Madero Towers there, they're ideal. It's an ideal location. It's given for his response in either end of the city and things like that. Unfortunately, it's owned by the state, and we all know about the red tape with the state, so it's just taken us a while to try to go through that. We're going to have conversations with the mayor, and maybe we can get to someone a little bit higher that can then trickle it down, and maybe we can do something then.
So what has been done about that site?
Well, I know we've looked at it. I know Kathy Ann Viveras was working on it and looking into it. I don't know where we ended up totally with that. I know we started to have the conversation, as you can see there in front of you. We did overlays.
Right, but.
We did estimates.
I understand that, and I have this in front of me, and it's, for my colleagues, it's just an estimate on what that would be, but Mrs. Viveras hasn't been here in 2 years, so has nothing been done further for this
Not since
particular
then.
plan?
We've had the issues and COVID and some of the other previous administration issues and things of that
And
nature.
these two, if anything were to be done at Stanley Street or at Central, they would have to go out to the voters. So,
So, just a random question while I'm thinking about it. How much do these studies cost? These, one is from.
So, the one with the red, right there, yep, that was a
Stanley?
professional estimator. That was one that we had did with a lot of other programs that we did with roofs and stuff, like on all of our buildings. That was a large cost that we did through our capital programs and stuff. I want to say that one, and don't quote me, I can get you the exact answer tomorrow, but I want to say that might have been 6,000, 7,000 for all of that stuff. That one was 33,000.
So I don't want them just sitting on a shelf if we're spending tens of thousands of dollars on studies, and I know I'm going a little off track here, but it is for, new stations, and these two particular stations are in disrepair Center and Stanley.
They're not going to go to waste, though.
And end up with the master plan that's sitting somewhere in the city. So this particular, Chief, a new Stanley, this is, I believe this is just the building, it says not land, has a price of 15 million?
I think that's Central. The 11 million, I think, was Stanley.
So total of all construction, total cost of
It's
construction?
15. It's 15 million.
15 is
Yeah,
Stanley and 20 is Central?
That's right.
That's
There's
correct.
numbers above that, total of construction and this total of project.
And this was back in 18 as well,
Right.
so these
I
costs
would
are-
just want to make sure that before we build a new building, that the buildings that we have are taken care of taken care of, or have a solid plan of replacement, other than something from, 3 years ago, and I understand it's the past administration, new administration comes in, sometimes everything takes a new direction, but I don't want to spend, millions on something and then have our other buildings all in the same department if the merger is still a merger.
It's still in progress. We're in negotiations, and obviously, there were two unions involved, so,
So the two unions are negotiating?
well, no, there are two unions that the city has to negotiate with to come to compromises. The last contract with the union from Local 1314 is where we came to a small standstill.
Okay.
And I can't speak any more about that, because obviously,
Do you know when that was?
2 years ago, it was under the last administration,
Okay. And that was 1314?
yes.
Okay. Okay, and I just had one other random question. Did the Flint station get it, did you say the Flint station got a new roof? You were saying things that stations had gotten.
Yeah, the roof that's on there, they're metal roofs on that particular building. That building's like a space building like this was. So it's a coating that has been placed on that roof.
So the coating is called new roof. It's not
Yes.
actually a new roof.
Right, it'd be steel, we'd be replacing the steel. It's not like your regular roofs like we did here at Government Center where you rip the rubber off, put new insulation, put new rubber on. Those particular roofs don't have that. So that those there that we put on, it's a 20-year warranty on this coating. We've had it inspected just recently by the architect, and we'll have it re-inspected by him going forward.
So I think that was information that had gotten passed to Mrs. Sahadi at the last meeting where she was listing the upgrades on the different stations. But could we just be really clear when we say new roof, that it's not actually physically a new roof? It's a product called new roof put on the existing roof, which is, to me, is a big difference. I understand it's a metal roof and it has this warranty, but I was under the impression that the station actually had a new roof.
Yeah, that roof, that particular building doesn't have anything other, it's a steel structure. So on steel structures like that, a new roof would be a coating. So the police station shortly will get a new roof, but it's a coating. We'll recoat the roof in the color that it is, and we'll recoat it, and that will protect the screws, the rubber washers, the metal itself from rusting, and things of that nature. And that's what you kind of do with those. Most of them are a 50-year roof, and when you do this, you get additional years out of it as long as you maintain them. And that's what we're doing, and we have inspections on them every year, so if there's any cracking or chipping or anything like that, the company will come back, recoat, retouch up, stuff of that nature.
So it's a company that actually comes out and does it?
Yes, yeah, that wasn't done, we didn't just go out there with a roller or anything, it was actually a company, there's a mesh that goes down that they put on top of it to reinforce it, they did the gutters for us inside all the gutter lines, so it was quite the job. I believe it was Gibson Roofing that actually did it.
Okay. But you see where that,
No, I understand, but we consider it a new roof because, again, even though it's a coating, it's going over the roof just like we do here. We pull the rubber off, we put it on. It's a new roof there. We put a coating on the steel, and it's considered a new roof because it's got a 20-year warranty.
okay. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim.
Thank you. So the cost that you had provided, the 2.7, so that covers the OPM and the architects, is that, and the contingencies? Okay. And I apologize to do this, so I wasn't following. Can you just go over the floor plan again? So which is the current existing?
So the current existing building is this. This
Okay.
is all of their living quarters and kitchenette area. This is where the trucks park.
Yep.
This is gonna be an addition that comes off this corner of the building where the trucks are now, that come out.
So that
So when you
connects
walk
to
in
the
on the
apparatus
first
bay?
level, you're going to have office
what it is?
space, regular, an enclosed office, and the training room in the back. You have all where the apparatuses go on this level here. This is the second floor level, above the training and office areas. This is where the sleeping quarters are, lockers, shower rooms, sitting area, small kitchenettes. Both of them have small kitchenettes. As far as the second floor, it's not a full kitchen, because the full kitchen, they'll be eating in the firehouse on the full kitchen side. This is for sink, wash coffee cups, maybe have coffee and things of that nature. And that's where that all is. So that's above this area here.
Okay. I think that's where I got lost, was the
Second floor.
second floor, yeah.
Yeah, so
I
that'd be a
missed that part.
mezzanine level when you walk in, set of stairs going up, you got a second means of egresses in the back, and we attach it to the existing building so that you can actually walk from this building to this building without having to go outside.
So is it still the intent to use the apparatus bay in the current station as the apparatus bay? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have that, I mean, it's not showing any trucks, but,
Right, they didn't put the trucks right in these
And then you
areas here.
have-
So these are the three doors that are right there. And then this would be basically like the front facade. This is a draft. What I've asked for is I would like to put it's like a large crown, what you see going on at Durfee. They call it GFRP panels. It's a fiberglass large crown that would almost mimic what we have on the existing station, which would go right across the top of this to kind of break up this piece in between.
okay. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. In seat 6, Counselor Peckham.
How are you, Chief?
Good evening.
Good evening. Just a quick question. I'm looking over the paperwork for the new station, which Council Vice President brought up.
Stanley Street is
Yes,
referring
sir.
to?
Yes, sir. What year was that station built? 1900?
I think it was 1911.
Okay, okay. The reason I ask is, and I'm not against EMS getting new housing at all.
Sure.
Would it be more cost-effective to include that in a Stanley Street plan? Because to my understanding, the rescues that we're using are return vehicles or spare vehicles. Those are the ones that will be housed in this facility, correct?
Well, Reserve will,
Okay,
and Rescue 7, it's a return vehicle, but it's also emergency response also.
okay, yeah, and,
Because obviously the returns from the hospitals are not all that often. So in the meantime, they're still doing emergency calls.
and you still have the other rescue running out of the north end as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, primary
Rescue
rescue
5.
5. All
Runs
right,
out of the North Station.
The reason I ask is we're gonna have to eventually do something with Stanley Street. That place is falling apart.
I know, we're well aware of that.
I don't have to tell you that, Chief.
Yeah,
I
I
know
know.
you know. I'm just wondering if it'd be more cost-effective, since these aren't response time pieces, correct? So they don't have to be specifically located like a fire truck, because you have
Well,
stations
the
throughout the
medical
city.
rescue does, but again, we've made that building very versatile, so we could have trucks run out of there. We could have fire trucks run out of there in the future. And that's the whole thing. Who knows where the north end's going to expand to? And the other thing is, you know, the industrial park is very, very vibrant now. And there've been complaints before about the response times of medical rescues to their facilities. So we've tried to alleviate that, because obviously we have Rescue 5 there, we have Squad 11 there. So now we're going to have Rescue 7 housed there, and that also will help alleviate that problem.
Okay.
But I understand where you're coming from, and I agree. But remember, this building here is going to be built and paid for by the EMS division, the enterprise fund.
Okay. And to touch upon the merger, I know in the beginning of my tenure on the council, I had brought it up right away.
Yeah.
That is something I would like to see come to fruition sometime soon, and I get it, the union issues, and completely understand that part of it. But in my opinion, if these two facilities say we merged them, because we have to put Stanley Street where it is due to response time, correct?
Sure.
So if we merge these two facilities, I think that would show a leap in the right direction of a merger, where we're putting EMS sleeping quarters, because I know right now the stations are jam-packed with medics, and you got your firefighters sleeping there. But Stanley Street has been a main concern of mine since I got on the council. And again, I don't have to tell you, the place is falling apart. I was just wondering if it'd be more conducive or cost-effective to do the two together. That's just a question I have.
Yeah, no, and I think the chief can speak to this, Counselor. The real issue with Stanley Street is finding a location for it. I mean, certainly, there has been talk about being able to use the property across the street or purchasing the property across the street, but that's years away. So we're not talking about that being something that can happen in the next even few years, because that's got to be negotiated with DHCD, if they're even interested in selling that property. If they're not, then where else can Stanley Street go that would serve that area of the city? So the chief can speak to this more specifically than I can, but, I was around when it was talked about initially back when Kathy Ann was here, and, there wasn't even any appetite for the housing authority to talk about selling that piece of property. So I would say that would be a long way away if that property was even feasible to be used for Stanley Street. It certainly is in the right location, but at this particular point, I don't know that that's going to be any time in the near future.
All right.
And Counselor, in all honesty, the need for a new building is right now, because we are so overburdened. All the stations are packed with all the apparatus, quarters are tight. Headquarters, we have no office space. Like I said, people are working out of closets. So this was a pressing need, and this is something that we can do right now and alleviate the problem. But, I agree that eventually Stanley Street's gonna have to be replaced. And Center Station, Mr. Gallagher started working that. We replaced the roof on it. We stopped some of the water infiltration. He has plans in place to eventually fix the windows on it, because I've always said that that station is built like a fortress. For the last 35 years that I've been on this job, very little's been done to it, and it still survived. There'll be buildings that we're building today that will be long gone, and that building will still be there. So it's my fervent intent that, with Mr. Gallagher in the next few years, that hopefully we can do more and more to that Center Station. So.
Okay, that's all. I appreciate your time. Thank you. That's all I have. I yield.
Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim.
Thank you. Just picking up on the other two stations, so I guess, we had talked about at the last meeting, the capital plan, not seeing any building projects on that capital list. So I guess what councilors are asking is just when can we expect to see some type of movement on those two buildings? And I guess the first question would be, Center Station would be a renovation, I would assume, right? So
Yes.
have we looked at Stanley as a possibility of a renovation or a knockdown rebuild at the same site, and just trying to find renting space temporarily for that?
I don't know.
Until we can get that built?
I don't think there's enough land where the Stanley Street Station is to build a station that, for a modern era.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when we first started thinking about it, we looked across the street and we saw all that land from the Carl Medeiros Towers. We thought that would be ideal. I mean, the other thing is, if we knocked it down, we'd have to move the apparatus, and where they're gonna go. They could go to that North Station and run out of there. But again, the response time is gonna be
Delayed, right?
expanded, delayed.
Yeah.
And one of the NFPA rules nowadays for fire stations, you have to be able to drive in and drive out. We'd have to ask for a variance from the board, fire, to be able to just back into a building now. They want you to have these buildings so that they can drive in the back, drive in, and then drive right back out again. So-
Those are all just guidelines anyways. There's not hard set rules in terms of what it is, so.
But just like you said, to get it any bigger on that property, then we take up the parking for the staff that are gonna be there, they'll be out in the street.
Yeah, I guess what I'm just trying to
I
figure
thought of the
out.
same thing. I thought of maybe taking the ball field and trying to fit it down towards Highland and then move the ball field over. Thought of a couple of different scenarios to try to get it to fit over there.
Yep.
But we gotta make it a little larger. We gotta have a few more bays, and it just doesn't fit.
And I guess where I'm going, and I think, that, again, this is where the council was trying to ask, is just really kind of get a handle on where all our municipal buildings are, what the needs are, what are we looking for capital projects, because I know we've got a number of projects coming on, but really trying to, because we've never really had a conversation about prioritizing, especially buildings, right? And I think this is where it's coming from. I understand the need for it. We're talking about, the $2.7 million. These other buildings are going to be in the, $30 million range if we're looking, well, at least Center would be. I don't know Stanley, but Stanley's at least a couple of $1.5 million, $8 million for a station like that. But I think just figuring out.
There's more.
Yeah, I would say more.
It could be, yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing, and depending on when we decide to build, the construction costs are just gonna.
Because ideally, we like to build something that has more than just two bays, like
Yep.
the station that's there now, obviously was the last station built for horses and wagons.
Mm-hmm.
So the stations these days are much larger, and obviously we want something more than just two bays.
Right.
Because we want something that'll be able to expand in the future.
So I guess just going back, it's just trying to figure out where are we with our building projects, what really truly is needed, and then for us to be able to prioritize and say, okay, this is what we need, just so that we see it. Because I don't disagree with the price associated with it. The $7,000 was really cheap. I think if you're going to do a real feasibility study, you're talking about anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 to truly, get some soil samples, do at least some initial site work on it to see if it makes sense. So. But I think it's valuable, right? So I think it's needed in terms of cost estimates, knowing what we're going to be looking for, kind of getting some conceptual drawings, floor plans, so that, at least the council understands what we're looking to put in there. So, but I agree with Councilor in seat 4 that, I don't want to see those go to the wayside. So those estimates, obviously, then you get escalation costs and things like that, but really trying to identify, where we need to really kind of focus in and how does that really fit into the debt schedule that we've got going on. This one clearly, obviously, is going to be paid up from the enterprise fund, so the impact to the general fund is not there. But again, it's just long-term strategic planning.
So what I'll do for this, council, for this year and through the budget, I'll be able to put it through my other professional services and stuff. I'll do some feasibility studies on things of that nature for these buildings and things like that going forward. Doing to the price tag, this, as Mary had said before, that this has got to go to the voters. It's hard for us to build on our side for buildings because we don't have an MSBA funding us 80%.
Right.
It all comes out of our pocket. So I'll get the feasibility studies done, so you can see exactly with floor plans, things like that. I'll sit with the chief and them and see what they want for their buildings, a 3 or a 4 bay garage for Stanley, things of that nature. We'll get an idea of what.
So I guess my only recommendation would be, so that we're not wasting money, is to really kind of identify which projects are on the table, which ones we feel are a priority, and then giving you the green light to go ahead and, let us know what the true cost is associated with those particular projects, whether they're, the top 5 or the top 3 projects, so that, we can kind of figure out, what direction we want to go in.
So you got a feasibility study there that was about $33,000 for the central fire. Gives you pretty much everything on the building. It doesn't give you the electrical, it doesn't give you the mechanical part of it. Again, I was going to add AC because that's what we did, the roof and skylights and stuff, but you have that. The cost estimate that we did that cost estimate when we did capital projects, so you could see what the costs were. We can kind of incorporate that all in with the feasibility studies that will get done, so that this way we'll have it before voting season if you decide to put it to the voters or anything like that.
Yeah. So the ball field that's there, so if you would take the ball field, that's still not big enough?
Yeah, I was gonna, well, if I take the ball field, it is. I wasn't trying to take the ball field. I was gonna shove the ball field to where the Stanley is, face it from home plate, like on the backside of Stanley Street, and face it back out and try to put it in the corner, but it just didn't overlay. It wouldn't work.
So, and the only reason I asked that question, because maybe it makes more sense and you get more appetite from Housing Authority and DHCD to allow us to utilize and build a baseball field in that open space, take the baseball field, do the fire station, and then all you're really dealing with is trying to find either a temporary location or just do some mix, calls either from, the Eastern Ave or North, kind of trying to figure out and try to make up some of those, that response time. But no, I don't disagree. I think we need to do something, and it's been a while since we've really kind of invested in the fire department. And
a lot of our buildings,
Right.
a lot of them need to be, we've been putting a lot of money into the vet center and stuff. Parks, we're doing some of the buildings there, putting new roofs on those, and we're doing that through our own staff, But we do, and like I said, we don't have the funding that we get like for schools, so
Right.
unfortunately, we kind of take a back seat to it all the time, so.
yeah, okay. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing no further discussion, is there a
Refer full
motion?
council.
Motion to refer the item to full council for adoption.
Second.
has been
Second.
made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Have a good night.
You
That will
too, thank
conclude
you.
our Committee on Finance. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Peckham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Fall River City Council meeting will now be called to order. Madam Clerk.
Councilors Kadim?
Here.
Dion?
Here.
Kilby? La Liberty LeBeau?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Peckham?
Here.
Pelletier?
Yeah.
Pereira?
Here.
President Ponti.
Here, if everybody in the chamber could please rise for a moment of silent prayer. Thank you, and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
If we can, because Attorney Thomas has been with us and waiting for a little bit,
So moved.
Second.
can we take item 3 out of order? Has been made by Councilor Kadim, which is the confirm tax assessor's parcel for Cuss Middle School. Has been made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Dion to take them out of order. Has been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to waive the rules for
So
a quick? Motion to waive the
Second.
rules has been made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Dion, to invite Mr. Thomas down for a brief explanation. Has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Thomas?
So it's just a clerical error.
Good evening once again, folks.
Good evening.
Thank
Good
you. Very simply, in 2004, when the city took some of the parcels that they needed for the Cuss School, predominantly the parcels where the baseball field is, the taking included an erroneous description. And what ended up happening is, instead of just taking the vacant piece of property in the back of 206 Globe Mills Ave, where the two mills are, because of an old description in the deed that was a little bit confusing, they ended up taking the larger of the 206 Globe Mills Ave properties, the mill. Clearly, that was not the intention. And what we're doing is that property has now paid us the taxes that are past due. It's in the process of being sold. My understanding, it's going to go to Loft Housing. And in doing their title, they found this title problem. So the solution is actually quite simple. What we need to do is do a confirmatory taking that only takes H20 Lot 21, and on the second page, you see that description. This description has been created as a new description with the assistance of the GIS department. It takes just that, and it releases whatever interest the city had inadvertently acquired in 206 Globe Mills Ave. And it authorizes the mayor to sign a release deed that can be recorded, releasing the interest in 206 Globe Mills Ave. There's no cost associated with the taking. It's a confirmatory taking, and so you're also making the order in here that you're not awarding damages, and you're reaffirming the public purpose of taking the vacant parcel, which is for the baseball field associated with Cuss.
Questions?
So
Hearing no questions, is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion on the motion to adopt. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas.
Have a good evening.
You too,
Good evening.
thank you.
Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The next order of business is a communication from the mayor and an order appropriating $1,738,680.
It would be appropriate to lift both items A and B under 1A and 1B communications from the table.
I'll make the motion to lift it from the table.
Motion to lift the item from the table has been made by Councilor Dion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd
Opposed?
like
The ayes
to
have it.
split A and B,
You want to split A and B?
if we could.
We'll take them individually. Actually, the appropriation order is the 1.7, and it's being funded separately under two separate line items, but no problem. We can take them separately. Questions? Is there a motion?
Question?
Counselor in seat one? I'm sorry, Counselor in seat two, Counselor Dion, sorry.
I have a question for Mrs. Sahadi.
Motion to waive the rules?
Motion made.
Has been made
Second.
by Counselor Dion, seconded by Counselor Peckham. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Mrs. Sahadi, welcome back.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Okay, my question involves the $1.2 million from the Employer Trust Fund.
That's correct.
Now, I know at the last meeting that we had the discussion that we don't know where monies are gonna land when elective surgeries, et cetera, start rolling in, and so this is my concern, we're taking this money and transferring it. 4 months from now, we're doing well, all of a sudden, the bills start rolling in, this money is no longer there. At that point, what will we do to fund the medical portion?
Well, at this particular point, Counselor, that particular fund is significantly overfunded, if you will, from where we've been in the past. We've been from 2013 until a year ago before the pandemic, where the account balance at the end of the year is anywhere between $100,000 and, we'll say, $2 million, for argument's sake. And a number of those years, even before my time, what the city would do is they would utilize some of that funding to fund the next year's budget. At the end of last fiscal year, we ended the fiscal year with $3.8 million, or almost $3.9 million in it. As of February 28th, we had $8.5 million in it. And we're projecting by the end of the year, with the claims creeping up a little bit for the next quarter, to be somewhere about $7.5 or $7.9 million. So at this particular point, really what we've done is overfunded the account, utilizing net school spending and what we thought was going to be the estimated healthcare costs for the school department over the last fiscal year. And so our last 2 fiscal years, really, when you think about it, because quite frankly, being at $3.8 million or close to $4 million at the end of last fiscal year is probably the highest the city has ever seen the employer trust fund to have a balance in for years. So at this particular point, I don't have any concern that moving this money, technically it was overfunded in the first place. Had we estimated net schools, the healthcare costs for the school department, when we estimated net school spending at a lower rate, there would have been just less monies put into that fund over the course of fiscal 20. And the same is going to happen, quite frankly, with fiscal 21 when we end the school year. I'm sure Mr. Almeida has probably represented to the school committee by now. If not, we have certainly talked about the fact that we're going to have in next year, when we close out, or when we're sitting here in 2023 and we're sitting on excess monies in the health insurance line item, net school spending is probably going to be understated again. And when DESC does the certification, we're going to owe the school department some additional monies as it relates to health care, if that makes sense to you.
So essentially, this $3.8 million is fiscal year 2020, the monies that were in the fund in 2020.
That's correct.
At the present time in fiscal year 21, we're at $8.5 million.
As of February 28th. So if we expand that out based on what the average, and we don't know, of course, what the claims are really going to be, but based on what we know we've had in claims over the past year and what we generally have in claims, excluding the pandemic year, for the next 4 months, we expect the year to end with close to $7.9 million in that fund.
So theoretically, is it fair to say that, given the expectation of our portion of healthcare, it really isn't excess money, it's just more money than we've had in the past?
Correct. Correct. I mean, the employer trust fund right now has a balance in it that is higher than the city has over, I mean, I went back to 13, but I'm sure I could go back further than that. normally they fund that employer trust fund with the needs of that next coming fiscal year and not significantly more.
Thank you. With that, I yield.
Mrs. Oddie, if I may, just for clarification, I know we had some discussions in the beginning of the budget deliberations for this fiscal year that we're in now about overfunding the insurance line. I know you spoke about overfunding. Is that separate from what we were discussing, or is it not? Because I remember the council took a firm position. Some were ridiculing us, rather, because we wanted to see funding to public safety for both police and fire, and we took a strong position that there may be some overprojections in the insurance part of the budget. Is that the part we're talking about?
Indirectly, correct. So the appropriation that, and we are actually working with Mrs. LaFlash right now for the estimates for this upcoming year. But you're correct. So, a year ago, Mrs. LaFlash, and, no fault of her own, because clearly the pandemic really dropped a ball on us that we had no way to really estimate. So there was some thought that in this fiscal year, the claims were going to increase due to elective surgeries and other types of medical procedures that may have been put off. And that really hasn't happened. And in fact, for this coming fiscal year, there'll be no increase to the employees in their biweekly withholding because of the rates being held flat as a result of the balances in the accounts.
So is this a different fund that we were speaking last budget year about the 8% increase in the insurance line, and that it actually was a little over 5% increase, or is
Well,
that the
it was
employee?
8%, and I know that there was citizen input this evening, because what we do, from an accounting point of view, is we have to look at the claims, the increase in the claims, and we look at the revenue sources separately. So the 5.7 is taking one revenue source, meaning the rebates, and netting it against the claims themselves. We have many other revenue sources that go into the calculation. We receive revenues from the school grants, we receive revenues from BCTC, we receive revenues from the rebates that we just talked about, revenues from CDA. We have stop-loss insurance that we receive refunds for. So that 5.7 is just taking the claims and subtracting the rebates, nothing more. The
Okay, so
claims
you'll-
themselves would have increased, and then we had sources of revenue, so.
So you're looking at a 0% increase you're expecting?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, Counselor, do you yield?
I yield.
Councilman seat 8?
I've just heard this year after year, that money is always taken from the employer's trust fund, to the point that at one point, we had $100,000 in there, which is nothing to have in there, from 100,000 to.
But that was back in
to 2 million.
2013,
It
so we're going way back.
should never, ever, ever, obviously, never be that low. And I don't know if there is enough that if people, if you have a couple of people that get a severe illness, that's lots of money that's being spent with the insurance.
And we have stop-loss insurance,
If you
so
have,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to, if we have some severe cases, we have stop-loss insurance for that purpose.
and how many people are now going in for elective surgeries, et cetera. But the one thing, when you were speaking about having from 100,000 to 2 million, to say that historically, we have sometimes used that money to fund the budget.
That's correct.
And that I have a problem with. That should be used to fund the budget. That's
Well, for the
Insurance
health
money.
insurance portion of the budget.
right. But I just think that
Well, that's been done for the last 20 years in this city.
I mean, I know it has been, but it doesn't mean that it's right to do. And that's why I said if you took this from somewhere else, leave that alone, take it from somewhere else, and then we can replenish it. If you took it from free cash, the 1.2, or stabilization, and then replenish it. But to leave this money there, that's just my thoughts on it. I mean, we've had 70% use, we've had 40% use, it's kind of fluctuated. But I know that when I go to the retirees' meetings, that now eligible to go to, that, you know, this is a big concern for some of the individuals there. With that, I yield, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
This is just a really important situation that we have to make sure we make our net school spending on, and you feel like this is an expense that can be made and not hurt the employee trust fund altogether.
It won't hurt the employer trust fund, and it's required to, the $1.7 million is required to fund net school spending at 100% for the prior fiscal year,
By law.
by law.
Exactly. All right, thank you. I yield.
Thank you. And just for the record, that's not the only place they would be able to get that money from, but that's one of their sources to meet net school spending, just so that it's clear. Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim.
Thank you. So the transfers that's in the operating budget for this current year, that's all been made into the employer trust fund? So,
Yes, so it's the process hasn't changed from when you're city administrator, they appropriate an amount.
Yep.
And they transfer 1/12 each month into the employer trust fund.
okay, so there's still some in the general fund.
Yes, well, for the remaining of the year, we're gonna
Right.
have the next 4 months,
Yeah.
1/12 deposited into the employer trust fund, that's
Right.
correct.
So in terms of your fund rating right now that you get from Gallagher, I'm assuming you're below 2. So even with this, you're still going to have significant savings balance at the end of the year, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right now, that's correct, yeah.
All right. With that, I yield.
And that's with, as you heard from citizen input, that's with Blue Cross anticipating COVID increases and
Yeah.
other increases. We're still going to be flat for this next fiscal year.
Okay. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Did the school department indicate to you, Mrs. Sahadi, on how they're going to spend the $1.2 million they receive?
They have not to myself. I believe they may have to the mayor, but I don't have any indication of as to how they're going to spend it.
Okay, has there been any discussions with you on picking up some of the capital items in the school department or debt payments?
No, Counselor. The only conversation I've had with the school department is in the governor's budget, there is an ability for them to use URSA 2 money to the total amount of the increase of the foundation budget, which for us would be about $1.3 million. We did send a letter to the school committee, but I do not believe they've acted on it.
Okay, thank you. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
So I guess 2 questions. So if we didn't take the money from the employer trust fund, where would we take it from?
I mean, that would have to be a conversation I would have to have with the mayor with regard to what his needs are, but at this particular point, the only other place that we have reserves would be stabilization.
And when you talk about the ESSER 2 money, we still have COVID monies that we haven't spent, is that correct?
The city of Fall River has CARES money they haven't spent, that's correct.
We have CARES, they have ESSER.
That's correct.
And none of those monies can be used for this purpose?
We are using whatever monies we can use with regard to the reporting we receive from Blue Cross Blue Shield as to those claims that are strictly pandemic or CARES related. So if somebody was hospitalized because they became ill, then those expenses would be included as a reimbursable expense under the CARES program. And we are tracking that.
Reimbursable to whom?
To the city of Fall River. They're part of the $7.9 million. The $7.9 million that was awarded to the city, it is just an award.
Right.
We still need to track those eligible expenses. So the Blue Cross would be an eligible expense against that $7.9 million if it were deemed to be COVID-related.
And that refundable item would only be on the city side, not the employee side?
Well, it would be 75-25. So 25% would go into, so whatever that claim was, 25.
Would be reimbursed.
Right.
So to Counselor in seat 2's point, which I know she's trying to get to, is that, did you look and see if this $1.7 million is considered an eligible CARES Act expense?
It is not,
It is not.
because this is to make the net school spending 100% whole.
I guess my other question would be, but I don't know that you're in a position to answer it, but I hadn't thought of this before. Obviously, we had a lot of costs, a lot of expenses that didn't happen because of COVID. Why didn't the school side, net school spending, why did that dollar amount not change when we had so many children not in school? Like,
Can you
I'm thinking
ask-
when you're
can
talking
you ask
net
that
school
again?
spending, it's,
Are you talking specifically like maybe transportation, for instance, or just?
well,
the
we know
overall-
transportation was affected.
Right.
Obviously,
that's-
we didn't
That's
spend
not
what,
net school spending eligible, so
Right.
that's a city appropriation.
right, but, let's see, how do I phrase what I'm trying to, something, I don't always get
I
what's
think
here.
what, I think what she's, Counselor in seat 2 is trying to say is, maybe you can answer it, is, was the school department's budget impacted by the fact that some kids were not in school and being done remote and others were?
Which would reduce our liability.
Could have, yes.
Well, I guess that would be for this coming fiscal year. So I suppose if they are not meeting net school spending in this current fiscal year, so there's the municipal charge, which is what we're talking about here, right? And then there's their charge. If they're not incurring the cost, it would have an effect on the net school spending, because you'd have an issue with the foundation budget. That's really something the school department would have to speak to. Council in seat 1 is agreeing with me, but I don't have the calculation as to how that would play out at the end of this fiscal year on the end of the year report.
Right.
Just point of information, I think to Counselor in seat 2, so regardless of we have remote learning or not, net school spending was already established at the beginning of the year, so we still have to meet that number for spending. So to Mr. Hadi's point is that if there is a reduction, all it's going to do is mean that they haven't spent on net school spending eligible costs, and we're just short, and we still got to make up the number regardless of there's an impact in services, because we've got to spend a minimum
Right.
of 100% to educate our students.
Thank you. Right. He articulated it better than I could.
Okay, thank you, with that I yield.
Thank you. Any further? Anything further? Counselor in seat 1, Counselor Kadim?
Yeah, so quickly, I mean, do we have like $40 million budget for healthcare in my office, or like 30 million or something like that? It's roughly, it's
40 million.
right, it's about 40
The
million.
appropriation,
So if I
approximately.
do 1/12 of that, that's like $3 million. I mean, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what the concern is with transferring it out of the employer trust. I mean, do folks feel more comfortable if we just take it out of the appropriation that we're making into the employer trust and have that come out from the healthcare line that's in the general fund budget? I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. I mean, the appropriation order that we have before us includes an appropriation based on estimates for both the city and the schools. So what we're saying now is that the schools are not where what we anticipated for the budgeted costs, and we have savings in that. So all we're looking to do is now take those costs, or that savings that we're gonna have in the healthcare, and just transfer it over so that they can utilize it for net school spending. So whether we take it out of the employee trust fund or we take it out of the operation general funds and not transfer it into
That's an alternative as
the
well,
employer
right?
trust. I mean, it's the exact same
That-
thing, but
that-
if we've got
the same
Hopper
bottom
because
line,
it's
right, would end up,
because
right.
it's the employer trust fund.
Right.
I mean, that's what we do every year, is the appropriation is to deposit that money into that account. So all we're doing is saying that obviously there's going to be a savings in there because the school department has not utilized or has not had the number of employees on health insurance, so we're just going to kick it back over to them so that they can spend it, so we're not short. So if that's, I guess, Mr. President, if that's the concern, I'd make a motion to amend it as opposed to the $1,282,529 coming out of the employer trust fund. I would just request that a transfer of that amount come from the healthcare general fund line item.
Healthcare.
Right, it's just,
Right, because that would do the same purpose. That would serve the same purpose by the end of the year.
Item. Okay. There's a motion made by Counselor Kadim to change it from the healthcare line item appropriation fund, has been made by Counselor Kadim. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, if you can, we have an order
Yes.
before us. It'd probably be appropriate for them to resend down a corrected order.
Right.
I mean, the order comes down from the
It's the
administration.
mayor's financial request, his financial appropriation order.
Right.
I would think the council can approve or grant leave to withdraw and request a new one coming from a new account, but I don't think it's the council's, the council has the ability to change where this is, where it comes from.
I agree. Councilor in seat one, you still have the floor.
No, it's fine then. I'll make a motion to refer it back to the mayor.
Motion to take the item, refer it back to the mayor to have it come out of the healthcare general line item account. I think I wrote that down correctly. Has been made by Councilor Kadim. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Hearing no further discussion, roll call. By the way, I understand, I'm voting no on this. I understand that there's a requirement to meet net school spending. I am very curious to see what the plans are for the school department and how they're going to spend the $1.2 million. While I understand we have an obligation, we also still have some unanswered questions with that. Hearing no further discussion, roll call.
To refer to the mayor with the council's suggestion to transfer from the healthcare line account.
In the general fund.
In the general
Yeah.
In
fund.
the general fund. Okay. Councilors Kadim?
Yes.
Dion?
Yes.
Kilby? Lullaby LeBeau?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Peckham?
Yes.
Pelletier?
Yes.
Pereira?
Yes.
And President Ponti?
No. Next order of business.
Have the mayor's communication and the memorandum of understanding between the Fall River Police Association, MassCop Local 1854, and the city of Fall River.
I'm sorry. Did we do the 456151 for state and county assessments for
Took
schools?
3 out of
It was
1.
all one.
This, it's all on the.
That was all one. Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you. My apologies. Reintroduce that item again, Madam Clerk.
Would be the mayor's communication and request for approval of the MOU between the Fall River Police Association, MassCop Local 1854, and the city of Fall River.
Motion?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Lee, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Councilor in seat 2, Councilor Dion.
I had one question on this, which was in terms of the body camera, the pilot program. The policy wasn't discussed, and they haven't decided what they're gonna do with the pilot program prior to agreeing on the contract. Is that like normal, or why wouldn't that have been determined first?
Can I?
I thought it was.
Council, you have a point of information, Councilor Lee?
Yeah, this was something I remember, I even brought it up in a couple of meetings last year, and what, and again, I don't have all the details because it's negotiation between, executive and union, but it was said to me that this was a point of concern by the union at the time, so they may have been going through the negotiations before this was presented. And I think they came to that agreement, and if I'm remembering correctly, the state of the city, the mayor announced that they did come to that agreement, and I think it was after that was agreed upon, but I'm not sure. But I think that's why there's a little bit of discrepancy in there. And with that, I yield.
Thank you. Councilor in seat 2, you still have the floor.
I yield, that was my only question. I
Thank
just
you.
found it
Just-
interesting.
Just so
Another
everybody-
point of information, if I don't mind.
Yeah,
If you don't mind,
Councilor
I'm
in
sorry.
seat 6, Councilor Peckham.
The mayor did say during the State of the City that he would be utilizing the pilot program with Walk and Beat 1 Alpha, if I do recall correctly. And they have been discussing this for some time, and I agree with Council Lee. I believe it came after this was established. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Just so everybody's aware and the community's aware, this MOU that's before us right now is a retro for 2 years. They have their collective bargaining that is up at the end of June, so they're going to have to get back into the negotiations with them and police, I believe. Hearing no further discussion, there's a motion to Council in seat 1.
I just have a question. So I think the cost analysis was roughly 525,000 or something like that for I think for the entire 2 years, right? Is that? Okay.
Yes. Through June 30.
So we'd be funding for that. I had two quick questions on the MOU that was submitted. One of them, I think I know the answer, but the other, I guess I'm trying to figure out what the intent and the purpose is the furloughs and the vacation days.
Motion to
where-
waive the rules.
So, motion.
Motion to waive the rules has been made by
Second.
Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Dion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mrs. Sahadi?
So item H just talks about Article 14, furloughs, vacation, Section 2. You're going to add a sentence to the end of Section 2 that states, "Employees shall qualify for the amount of furlough days based on their credible service with the Fall River retirement system. However, they shall pick their furlough based upon their time and service with the Fall River Police Department, regardless of service with any other entity in the, or outside of the city of Fall River." What is it that I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to accomplish here.
So I believe one of the items that were being negotiated, I think it was actually already being honored in practice, so it's really taking that item and memorializing it into the contract. But if you come from another department within the city or actually within the state, what they're allowing you to do is to come in at whatever credible years you have. Now, when you go to retire, they will take whether you were in Group 1 and Group 4 and prorate that. But if you come, I'll just use DPW and fire for an example, because I know of at least one individual that's moved over. They were in DPW for 7 years, so they would go into the fire department at 7 years, or whatever that level of pay is at that particular point. And the same thing would be true with the police department. With the police department, we have calculated that represents about 16 people and about $30,000. Now, that would only be effective in the next fiscal year, because as you recall, anyone that has credible service adjustments that need to be made, they have to be made by April 1st for the following fiscal year.
Okay. And that's why we see that language of notification to the chief later on in one of those
Correct.
sections. Okay. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
And Mrs. Sahadi, that with the credible service, all of that was an agreement that was done with the prior administration that now got put in to this because it was an agreement with the prior administration, correct?
That's my understanding. That's
Okay.
correct.
With that, I yield. Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing no further questions, is there, the motion to adopt
Motion
has
to
been
adopt.
made and seconded. Hearing no further
Second.
discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 4 is the City Council President's communication and the establishment of the policy on the use of the City Council's attorney.
Is there a motion to accept, place on file?
Motion with place on
Motion
file.
to accept the item and place it on file has been made by Councilor Peckham. Seconded by Council Vice President. Discussion? Here, Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
Question. The question that I have, the policy for use of city council attorney, et cetera. When we had the first discussion on this, I voted present. I didn't vote yes or no. And when I look at this, one of the things that you had said at the time was I had asked about travel time. Are we going to have to pay for travel time? Are they going to attend every meeting? There was a lot of confusion about that, whether we'd have an attorney at every meeting or what have you, by whatever the RFP said. And there was going to be something written up about that. So I don't know if we're paying travel time. There's nothing in here that talks about the limitations, other than if anybody wants to call the attorney, we have to speak to you or the vice president, write a letter, get permission. But there's nothing about what we're paying. I know the rate of pay was $275, but I thought there would be more in that relative to the terms of whatever we were paying. I mean,
Yeah, so there's been
one of the
no,
attorneys was here today at ordinance committee. I think she did a pretty good job. She brought up some good points, so I'm not totally opposed, but that's not what we were told
Yeah.
this was going to be.
So we have not seen a bill from her yet, so we don't know if there's going to be any travel. I don't believe that there is.
Well,
but-
if she's out of Boston, I'd hate to pay her $275 to come up, $275 to go back.
So when we start getting the bills, I can touch base with her, or the council vice president, one of us could touch base with her at some point tomorrow to see about that. But that's the first part. The second part of your question, Counselor, is she going to be here for all our full council meetings? And that is in here, that's gonna be.
She's not.
She doesn't have to be.
Right.
But I am urging her, whoever the chair of ordinance ever is for the chair of ordinance to be in constant communication with her, because that's where really a lot of the work is done, a lot of the laws, the laws and the work is coming in ordinance committee. So I know our council vice president spoke with her. She was at our ordinance committee meeting, and I'd really like it for like a lot of the work to get done in ordinance, because a perfect example, we didn't need her here tonight at all, so she didn't need to sit here and speak to us, or sit here and charge us $275 an hour. So I'll be cognizant of the bills, but I'll get back to you at some point tomorrow in the council about the travel expense.
Well, I just find it odd that we're hiring somebody, but we don't even know if we're gonna pay for that or not. I just find that odd.
Well, it wasn't in her RFP proposal that we all accepted, that she was
I
going to include
didn't, I
travel.
voted present.
Besides you,
I
everybody else.
didn't vote for it. Not that I'm opposed to having someone, but I would just like to know what the cost is gonna be. If we're gonna be paying for travel time, or for, phone communication, or for a letter, or this or that, then I would be careful on how much I use her. Now, every month, you're gonna get a bill, and you're gonna, one of the things on here was that if you got a monthly bill, that it would go on the council agenda to be placed on file. So we'll see how far our money goes. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none. Motion to accept and place on file has been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 5 is the planning board's communication and recommendation with regard to the Notre Dame Rectory and adjacent parcels in the central HD zone.
And just so everybody's aware, the planning board's opinion is that approving this amendment will be of benefit to the city by advancing the goals set forth in the Housing Development Initiative that's enabled by Mass General Law, Chapter 40V, to promote increased residential growth, expand diversity of housing supply, neighborhood stabilization, and economic development in gateway cities. Just so everybody's aware. Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll say something.
Is there a motion before we have discussion?
Motion.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Pereira,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Discussion, Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
I think the only thing in requesting this amendment to get the HDIP zone is that, this project, I had watched it, it was 14 units, market rate, 2 units that were home funded, but the project that they're working on is like $5 million at the Notre Dame Rectory, and all of the parking is going to be off-site, which is good, and it saves that building. It's a beautiful building on the inside and outside. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, motion to adopt has been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next order of business.
Whereas the city of Fall River is anticipated to receive over $70 million from the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, and whereas this is considered one-time money and there will likely be restrictions on how the money can be allocated, now therefore be it resolved that the administration present to the City Council Committee on Finance a presentation that outlines a suggested plan, and be it further resolved that the administration's plan include a list of priorities from the highest to the lowest priority.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Is there discussion on the item? Councilor in seat 8, Councilor Pereira.
I just want to ask, I thought I heard the mayor on, I don't know if it was the 6th floor report or if it was in the media, or maybe he told me, but I thought that his plan was to look at how much money we were going to get, where the money could be spent to give us the biggest bang for our buck, and that he was going to put a team together to look at that with the council as well. Did anybody else hear that?
I heard about it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about it, yep.
Because I think spending this amount of money, we really need to focus on where we're going to get the most for that. I agree. We talked about fire stations and other things tonight. I'm sure that there's stuff that we can utilize some of the spending, the school project, Durfee High School, putting some of that out. CSO, I don't even know at this point. Do you know, Mr. President, what we owe on the CSO project?
70 mil, maybe? I think it's in this, it's up there still. I think it's in the 70s. I'm not sure off the top of
That's
my
a
head.
bill that never seems to go away.
Right.
With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
Yeah, I don't know if my colleague in C8 is referring to the same broadcast that I heard, but in the one that I heard, and I believe this is pretty close to verbatim, the mayor made this, the mayor was asked, do you intend on having a public forum? Are you willing to have people, members of the public come forward to, have discussion, give ideas? And his response to it was, well, I'm not opposed to that. However, I have people that I want to bring to the table, and I want to speak with friends of mine who are in the banking industry. But that's the statement that was made publicly. With that, I yield.
Thank you. And that's great and all. You can speak to have a bunch of task force and stuff, because that's what we like to do. But at the end of the day, the city council has the ability to do what we have to do and can do with that money with the legislative body, with the appropriating authority. What I've read and speaking and seeing what I've read from DLR and stuff, we're expected to see $35 million come to the city in May of this year from the municipal side, and then the rest of it is going to be coming next year, next fiscal year. So it's not like we're going to, so everybody thinks that we're not getting this big check of $70 million and it's going to be like, here you go spend it. So like we've all talked about, we have discussions that we need to have with capital items. I've just had this conversation with the mayor today about infrastructure.
Yes.
Lots of things that we've talked about for a long time, but we have parameters. So that's why I filed this resolution, so that we could hear from them what their plan is. We can then say, here's our ideas, so that when we do get the money and they budget prepare, that we're not drinking out of a fire hose. We're seeing what their plan is. And that's why I filed the resolution. Counselor, you yield, Counselor?
Yeah, I had one more statement, but I lost it.
We'll
I'll
get
be
back to
tonight.
you. Counselor, we'll get back to you. Counselor in seat 5, Counselor Lee.
I'll talk slowly if you remember, then you can.
Maybe.
No, I think it would be a complete disservice to the city if we do not put infrastructure as a top priority for this. If we get anything out of this money at all, it should be some long-term sustainable infrastructure plans. When we look at what's going on a federal level, no matter who sits in the office, infrastructure just seems to be pushed to the wayside or kicked down the road all the time. If we have an opportunity to keep it in-house and to do it on our own without worrying about what so-and-so is doing somewhere else, we should be doing it. We should be doing it ASAP as soon as we get it, in my opinion. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And one last thing, I know the CFO is here right now. I'd urge the administration in preparation for this meeting, because there is going to be a lot of questions on infrastructure, to maybe get with National Grid to see what kind of plans, what kind of streets they plan on doing the underground work, so that we don't have what's happening over on President Avenue, where they did one part of the street, they overlaid one side of the street, and they didn't go curb to curb, which we were promised was going to go curb to curb. So I would urge that maybe we get with National Grid and DCM to find out what streets are going to be paved within the next 3 years, so that we can prioritize as a council what streets we need to do first, because the patchwork in the streets from 2nd Street to President Avenue, man, I've never seen it so bad. So just a point so that they can bring that to our attention. Counselor in seat 2, Counselor Dion.
Yeah, the only other comment that I was going to make was that you're right. Obviously, no doubt there are going to be parameters. There are going to be strings attached. This isn't just free money, here you go, have a good time.
Right.
But I believe that we need to do something that is going to benefit the taxpayers in a significant way. I don't know what that is, whether it's related to the CSO project, whether it's related to the debt override, what it's related to. But, this is one-time money, this isn't reoccurring money, and I think we need to do something significant for the taxpayers.
And just so you know, Counselor, my conversations with the mayor were pretty candid today. He agrees that if we get the restrictions, which I think they're going to be coming out with soon, with respect to maybe reducing our water rates as a result of supplementing some of our CSO money. From that, that's a conversation that he plans on having with us. But we got to wait and see, and they got to wait and see, and we got to find out what we can and can't do with the money. But we're not going to be able, from my early reads, we're not going to be able to supplement the 2.5% increase or taxes or anything.
Right.
There's strict restrictions on revenue when it comes to that. Now, the feds are working on another $3 trillion plan for infrastructure and broadband and stuff like that. So we'll see if we see money from that too.
I yield.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing none. Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thanks.
I have a citation for the students and faculty of Diamond Regional High School Electricity Program.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt the
Second.
citation has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Have the acceptance of Linwood Street extending from Mariano Bishop Boulevard to a dead end along with Way Street.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve and adopt has been made by Councilor
Second.
Dion, seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Right now?
Item number 9 is the pole location. So this is the order granting permission to Mass Electric for one new pole on June Street.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Pereira,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Have the order recommending that the city engineer prepare plans for the acceptance of Detroit Street extending from Stevens to Omaha Streets.
Referring to the planning board would be appropriate.
Motion to refer.
Motion to refer to the planning
Second.
board has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Have the police chief's report on licenses.
Motion to adopt and place on file.
Motion to adopt the police chief's report has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I have a number of claims.
Motion
Motion to refer to Corporation
Motion
Council.
to refer to Corporation Council has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Pereira. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Minutes of the Committee on Finance from February 9th.
Motion to adopt.
Motion
please.
to approve has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Kadim. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I have an open meeting law complaint filed by Patrick Higgins alleging a violation by the Committee on Regulations on March 8th.
Motion to refer to Corporation
Motion to
Council.
refer to Corporation Council has been made by Councilor Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Pelletier. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I have a notice of casualty and loss at 130 Bigelow Street.
Motion to accept and place on file has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend the accompanying proposed ordinance, accompanied by an emergency preamble, be passed through first reading, second reading, passed to be enrolled, and passed to be ordained. This is handicapped parking.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt the
emergency
emergency
preamble.
preamble
Second.
has been made by Councilor Pereira, seconded by Councilor Dion. Roll call on the emergency preamble.
Emergency
On the
preamble.
emergency preamble, Councilors Kadim?
Yes.
Dion?
Yes.
Kilby? La Liberty LeBeau?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Peckham?
Yes.
Pelletier?
Yes.
Pereira?
Yes.
And President Ponti?
Yes. Motion to pass through all readings
So moved.
has been made by
Second.
Councilor Kadim, seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Committee on Ordinances and Legislation, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading. This is a miscellaneous traffic ordinance.
Motion to pass through first reading has been
Motion
made by
passed.
Councilor Peckham, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Dion. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Ordinances and Legislation, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying proposed ordinance be passed through first reading as amended. This is the Abutters Lot Program.
Motion to approve.
Motion to
Oh,
pass through
sir.
first reading has been made by Councilor Dion, seconded by Councilor Lee. Discussion? Hearing none. Councilor in seat 5, Councilor Lee.
Just a statement on KP Law. Their addition to the meeting this afternoon was greatly appreciated, in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that going forward from here.
Regarding the Abutters Lot Program?
Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely. Just, there was a lot of good additions and just good discussion She and Attorney Thomas were just very helpful in that process, so.
Very good.
That's all I had to add to that, and I yield, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, motion to pass through first reading has been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Finance, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend the accompanying loan order be referred to the full council for action, with Councilor Kilby absent and not voting. This is the $2,100,000 for city building improvements.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor Kadim, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Finance, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying loan order be referred to the full council for action, with Councilor Kilby absent and not voting. This is the loan order for departmental equipment. The suggestion was to increase the loan order to $500,000. So this would be as amended.
Motion to adopt as amended would be appropriate.
So moved.
Motion to adopt as amended has been made by Councilor Kadim,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Peckham. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
The Committee on Finance, at a meeting held on March 23rd, voted unanimously to recommend that the accompanying loan order be referred to the full council for action, with Councilor Kilby absent and not voting. This is the $2,700,000 for EMS equipment storage building.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made
Second.
by Councilor Kadim, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Pereira. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Whereas city parks are in need of repair, and whereas baseball leagues are all independent and do fundraising on their own, now therefore be it resolved that the administration prepare a presentation to address the needs of city parks and the needs of leagues, and be it further resolved that the administration and park board be invited to a future meeting of the Committee on Finance to present a plan to improve our city parks and baseball fields.
Motion.
Motion to adopt has been made by Councilor
Second.
Peckham,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Dion. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We need a 2-minute recess to sign ordinances. Fall River City Council meeting is now back in session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn has been made by Councilor Peckham, seconded by Councilor Vice President. Hearing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Good night.